Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland, a special live stream episode. This is episode 287. I'm joined as always by my co-host Stacy, that is at Stacy Patton 89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. The calm before the storm, right?
Yeah, been an extended calm because the Knicks clinched the playoff spot so early. So, and they've not just clinched the playoff spot, but been locked into the 5 seed for a while. So, that's been nice to discuss. This upcoming series, we are joined by Jordan Cohen. That is at sports_by_stats on Twitter. Jordan, how are you doing? Our resident fan, Cavs fan, who resides in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I'm doing really good. I'm really kind of excited to be Cavs playoff basketball again. It's been a while, and I did not expect. If you asked me a year ago if the Cavs were going to be in the playoffs this year, I would have told you no, or I would have assumed LeBron James is somehow a Cav again. So I'm pretty excited that
Even
neither of those
after
things are true.
they were close last year, right?
Yeah, but I thought last year was kind of we were a squirrel a lot of the time. Teams didn't really know early on how to defend the 3 7-footers, and by the end of the season, teams figured it out.
Yeah, and we're going to talk all about that, all of the variations that the Cavs can throw at us. But before we get started, I have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at thestrick.land on Instagram. We are posting all kinds of new content on there. Also, the Strickland has YouTube channel where if you are currently watching this, you will be watching it on YouTube. If you are and you haven't already, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. Strickland also has new merchandise. I'm wearing some of it. You may have seen some of it drop last week. The Quickland line that we came out with. I ordered that. I'm waiting for it to come, and I will be wearing that all the time on here, which you'll get to see. It's great. But we have more stuff planned. Check that all out. There's a bunch of new merch on there: shirts, sweatshirts, sweatpants, hats. You name it, we got it. Finally, the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There is a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag that comes out every other week, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, a.k.a. the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Amico. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There's a further tier. There's a $9 tier that gives you access to Stricken Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles written by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, let's get started. Yeah, so the Knicks they will be playing a playoff series against the Cleveland Cavaliers. That series gets started on Saturday. Unfortunately, that's all we know so far. We know that there will be a game on Saturday. The NBA has decided not to tell us when any of the other games will occur. So I'm looking forward to finding that out. But my initial thoughts are it seems like Randall's trending to be ready for game one. I'm not sure how I feel about that. If it's like he's ready or if he's actually ready. I think there's a difference. But I think this is going to be a really good matchup. This probably, I think this will, I'd be shocked if this isn't the most competitive first round series, at least in the Eastern Conference. The West has obviously, the West is just
A mess.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on out there. But the East is, I think this is the one series that really could go the distance. I don't see it in any of the other ones. This is honestly the matchup I wanted going back to probably around midseason when it felt like, okay, the Knicks, maybe they figured something out. Looks like they're probably going to make the playoffs. I thought this was the team that we matched up with the best of like the top 4 seeds in the East, or the likely top 4 seeds in the East at that point, I should say. And it's worked out that way. And I'm not sure if Cavs fans feel the same way. I see on Twitter that they're very confident that this is a great matchup for them. I'm a little bit more apprehensive than that than I seem to see Cavs fans are saying. But I also think, again, I talked about this before, but I really think the Randall injury is a big deal. And I just, it's such shitty time for that injury to happen we obviously did not get a chance to see how he responded at the end of the regular season because he just sat out the entire way, which he should have. Obviously, he had to. We should be getting an update sometime in the middle of this week, but I think that's a really big deal. And honestly, without I just don't have faith that he's going to be 100% in the series, mostly because that injury looked bad. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I do like the Knicks' chances a lot to win the series. Without that, though, I'm a little bit more skeptical of what they can do. I think they can still make it competitive. I still think they can push it 6 or 7 games, but I just don't think they can get over the hump without Randall.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you said. I do think it's not so much that the Cavs aren't a great team. I think we need to recognize that as Knicks fans. Like when we say they're the best matchup, the competition is, a team that has multiple MVP player in Giannis. I think the Bucks are an especially bad matchup because their best 2 players are elite defenders at the 2 positions where we have our best 2 players, right? They had Giannis and Drew, and they add a stretch 5, which has also been very difficult for the Knicks, even as much as Mitch has improved and their perimeter defenders have improved. Like when you pull Mitchell Robinson out of the paint, it changes things a lot. That is why I will be very much worried whenever Evan Mobley's 3-point shot fully comes around and he can stretch the floor. This is a team like the Cavs are on the rise. But, you have them. Boston is, just when they're on with their ball movement and defense, they're just a tough team to beat. Definitely a 7-game series. And then Philly is also a horrible matchup for the Knicks because of Harden always has caused problems. And of course, you have, again, MVP candidate. So I don't think it says much about the Cavs to say they're the best matchup. I hope Knicks fans realize that they're the best matchup out of a bunch of really tough matchups. The other thing I'll say is I think that a lot of people are underestimating these Cavs. I saw someone, I forget who it was. It might have been Jeff Rasmussen, who put up a stat that said the Cavs are a 51. Did they win 51 games, Jordan, or
51 or 52 makes
52.
sense, yeah.
Yeah, and they've played if you go by Pythagorean win, which, we know can be a little bit shaky, but they've played like a 57-win team based on offensive and defensive rating. And if you look at the Bucks, it's the inverse, right? They won 57 games and they played like a 51-win team. So that should tell you that the Cavs matchups or no matchups, it's a really good team. And I think the other thing I'll add on the Julius Randle note, I'm not worried about. I think that if he comes back, this is a guy who's been very robust to injuries. What I worry about is his jump shot has been key. Just shooting league average versus shooting 32% is a big deal for him. And if he's not in rhythm, that matters a lot because if Mobley can help in the paint off of Randle, that's a big deal. And the other thing is Randle at best has been above average on defense this year, maybe a little bit worse than that. At his worst, he's very detrimental. How much on those margins does the injury affect it? Those are the 2 things I'm looking at with his injury specifically.
Yeah. I will say, I think there's a lot of weird stuff with kind of how you want to judge the various teams in the series. What I will say is, look, the Cavs, I think all year, if you look at their whole season, just pulling it up right now, they were they finished. Let's just see this right now. They were second in net rating basically for the whole year. If you go back all that way, so that's not insignificant. They were by certain metrics the second best team in basketball this year. I don't fully feel that way. I think they are a team that is I think they beat the shit out of teams that they match up well against, and I wouldn't say they struggle against good teams, but I do think that their metrics probably overrate how good they are in comparison to the best teams in the NBA.
It's kind of like Gonzaga with Ken Pom, right? Like Gonzaga, and then usually the top 2 or 3 SEC teams. If you're a college basketball fan, those conferences are very top heavy, and so a lot of these teams like Gonzaga and Kentucky, when they're really good, Tennessee will have these insane. Houston this year. Insane Ken Pom ratings, but it's not that it doesn't mean that they're not really good, but it there are on the margins can be a point or 2 maybe there that exaggerates, right? So
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in here. So, like, I think the to that point, the Cavs just rocked the Celtics. Like, weirdly enough, the Celtics, out of all like the top 6 seeds, are the team I feared the least. Is a Cavs fan. The Cavs just everywhere the Celtics are strong, the Cavs can match up, and the Celtics cannot handle the two big lineups. They don't have the bodies for it. At least when the Cavs start Mobley and Allen.
They can't guard guards either. Like that's one of their biggest
Right.
issues.
No, I mean the Cavs are a really bad matchup for Boston.
Yep.
Like if I'm the Celtics, I'm glad the Cavs played as well as they did because right now they wouldn't need to play us until the conference finals, and I don't think we'll get that far. So I think the Celtics were a bad matchup, or we were a bad matchup for them. The Cavs really struggle with teams with good point of attack defenders for obvious reasons, right? If you can shut down Garland and especially Mitchell, or at least slow them down, that is really bad news for the Cavs. That just like there isn't an option B, right? The option B, if our offensive sets slow down, is Donovan Mitchell isolation. And Donovan Mitchell, I mean, I saw this basketball index scatter plot, and it was like passing creation and like isolation percentage or like isolation points per possession. And Mitchell's far and away the best. Like he is absolutely incredible creating his own shot and creating for others. In the playoffs, that's really, really important. I think that's going to be interesting this series too.
Sorry to interrupt, but on basketball index, I've seen varying. So does points per possession include assists or?
I don't know. Okay. I saw it on Twitter. Yeah, I saw it on Twitter. I don't know.
I think anecdotally, the strides he's made as a passer.
No matter what.
Yeah, and like I think we can see from the eye test, like he's taken amazing strides as a passer for his first couple of years from Utah. But
no, he's not like one of the NBA's best passers or anything like that. But he does a really good job in isolation in the playoffs. That's really, really important. I think, unfortunately for the Cavs, like Jalen Brunson's a really good isolation player too. And I think also, unfortunately for the Cavs, the Knicks, out of all of the Eastern Conference playoff teams, sans Milwaukee, have the best point of attack defenders. And I think that's going to make it hard for the Cavs.
Yeah. I just think there's a couple of things that I like for this matchup, and I've always liked for this matchup for the Knicks. One of which actually has become an even bigger strength, I guess you could say, relatively speaking, in this series. The Cavs' defensive rebounding has been bad, and I know like
it's the worst in the NBA.
Yeah, I think since the All-Star break, so post All-Star, if you look at their numbers, they are the worst defensive rebounding team in the league.
How much does that change?
Can I make one really point?
Yeah.
Sorry,
so two really quick points.
I think it's more about Love disappearing than
I guess three really quick points. Then one, no Love. Two, Jarrett Allen was hurt a lot of that second half of the season. And three, it was a switch from JB Bickerstaff to get whoever that three was, whether it be Okoro for most of it, but when Okoro was hurt, LeVert or Dean Wade, it was to get them out in transition. So when the Cavs started the year, that player would rebound on defense. Like they would crash the boards. And Bickerstaff changed that so that player would run in transition. And to me, that actually was part of why. I'm not saying it's not a valid stat. Like it's valid. The Cavs don't rebound defensively well. They haven't for half the season. But there's also a tactical element there.
Yeah. And I feel like we saw that the last matchup was such a weird one because the Knicks didn't have Randall, the Cavs didn't have Allen or Okoro, and it is what it is. But like the Knicks have rebounded well against them throughout the year, and
that's the major strength of the Knicks offense, right? That's probably their top strength.
Right. So like it's one of their best strengths. It's if not their best. The Knicks have also been they were the 5th best offensive rebounding team after the All-Star break. I would venture to guess some of that is because they just were making a lot more shots after the All-Star break. If you look for the whole season, the Knicks were, I believe, the 3rd or maybe 2nd most. They had the second highest offensive rebound percentage for the entire season at 31.8. So like they're rebounding nearly 1/3 of their misses. That's a big, big deal. And I think it's why they've just been a weird matchup for Cleveland, because Cleveland's defense is awesome. I think they're the number one. They were the number one defense in the league this year for good reason. But like, even the matchups where because when Okoro plays, like that's why I thought the last matchup was so weird, because the way both teams played in that game is just not how this series is going to be played at all. Like,
Yeah,
just,
like that last game was a fun game. Like that Mitchell Brunson, like basically end to end was so much fun. I think it means absolutely nothing for this series.
yeah, it's like the way I was thinking about it too was even for Cleveland, like they were like Mitchell was insane to start that game, and obviously a lot of that was just like hot pull up shooting from the perimeter, which you can't do anything about, really. But like some of the stuff where he was driving to the rim and all this stuff, I'm like, this is probably weirdly the best spacing he's ever going to have. Like he's not going to have better spacing than this. So for the Knicks to win that game was encouraging in a few ways, but also, like, to your point, probably doesn't matter to this series at all. If it matters for like brief 3 or 4 minute stretches, for like that's all it's going to matter to, which maybe that tilts the series. But most of it's going to come down to what I think is just like the Cavs have their 4 guys. They have Mitchell, they have Garland, they have Mobley, they have Allen. Okoro's like he's been shooting better. I think he shot 43% since.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this because like I came on this podcast and I've been tweeting all like that whole first half of the season. Okoro's got to be dropped from the rotation completely. He was terrible, and like happened last season, he finally clicked towards the second half. His on-ball defense is one of the best in the NBA. And again, I think this gets to the defensive rebounding point for the Cavs. One of the things Bickerstaff changed was rather than have Okoro crash the boards, which maybe gets the rebound, but it makes him useless on offense, right? Like if he gets the ball and then we have to go into half-court sets, Okoro can't do shit. But if you can get Okoro out in transition, then he's actually a good offensive player. So I think part of the stop that 3 not rebounding the ball was so Okoro could be a net neutral on offense.
Yeah, and I mean he shot the ball. I mean I know he shot it better. He's shooting like 43% from 3. I think after the All-Star break, but it's like 2.6 attempts.
36% for the season,
Yeah,
and like
it's like 2.6.
And it's only boosted. It's 2.6 attempts per game, but it's also
it doesn't matter.
Like, I was expecting to see his corner 3. I was gonna say I was expecting his corner 3 percentage to be like boosting that, and most of his 3s are from the corner. It's 85%, but it's only 38%. So it's not like he can't. It seems hit above the break 3s.
I will say this: I think if the Knicks force Okoro into taking,
they'll live with it.
7 threes in a game, they will be happy no matter what the results are. They will live with that.
I mean it's the Andre Iguodala path to beating the Warriors a few years ago, right? Like you just or Draymond, right? Like
I want Iguodala. Give me the last shot in a game. Are you taking Steph Curry or I want Iguodala?
No, but you know what you know what I mean though, right? Like it is the
you dare those guys. You have to live with it.
Yeah, he is the weakness of this offense. I do fear that in the playoffs, like I've read so many different studies and reports that show this. I believe it. Defense is a lot less consistent than it is in the regular season, right? Like bad defense. I mean, I saw this when the Cavs won the title. They were a terrible defensive team in the regular season, but they could turn it on in the playoffs. I don't think you guys are the 18th best defense. Like in the playoffs, you guys are going to be good. You have Tom Thibodeau as your coach. Like you're going to be good defensively.
Yeah, and I think more so than that. I just think the Cavs are like not the teams that I think have given us the most problems offensively. Generally, I think have been teams that push the pace effectively, like
or go 5 out, right?
Yeah, or go 5 out, and the Cavs can't do either of those things. I mean, I guess they could try going 5 out, and it would be terrible. But like,
I don't think that. I think the Cavs strategy, at least like game 1, game 2, is so the second half of the season, but mainly lately when everybody's been healthy, the Cavs have done a 4-5 pick and roll. Like Mobley and Allen in a pick and roll, which is really hard for most teams to defend because Mobley's really good on the ball. And Allen's a really good screener.
crazy at 20 as like 6'11". Like, I think like the Cavs in coming years are going to be really interesting to watch. Just like because I do think he's a generational prospect, and I think like
Yeah, I
he's
mean,
kind of
especially
flown under the
now
radar
that
weirdly, but yeah.
now that the NBA got rid of like the two supermax rule, and the Cavs can convince Mitchell to stay. That team's going to be good. But yeah, that 4 or 5 pick and rolls, I think how the Cavs will attack you guys early. I'm interested in how you guys defend that because, like, I mean, I was looking at some stats like over the past week or so, and one of the interesting ones is in the 3 games the Cavs lost, or 2 games the Cavs lost, 2 games, 3. How many games did we lose to you guys?
3.
3. In the 3 games we lost to you guys, Mobley had under 10 shooting attempts each game. And that isn't like the Cavs' second half of the year. That has not been the case. Like, he's shooting the ball a lot. He's getting a lot more involved. And I think that's going to be a weird look for you guys. Like, I think that will be hard for you guys to deal with, at least early on in the series, right? I mean, the Cavs' best shot is winning games 1 and game 2. Game 1 and game 2.
But I mean, what in a 4-5 pick and roll, like it's tough to defend Mobley. But you know, if teams can go under that, right? How do you kind of punish that? How have you seen him punish that? Because obviously the pull up isn't really a threat right now.
Yeah, so there's kind of like 2 things I've seen a lot of. One is where the Cavs will have like Mobley as ball handler, Allen is the screener, and then somebody like Mitchell screening for Allen. So if you go under, it means Mitchell's going to have an open 3, which has been the general way they've handled it. The other way they've handled it is doing more of a Spain pick and roll, where you'll have like, I mean, Okoro sometimes does it with like Garland in the left-hand corner. So Mitchell will Mobley will go either around Okoro or Allen. He'll pick one, and then Garland will be in generally the left corner. So that's how they get around it if teams try to go under.
Yeah, I mean, the way I just feel about this is like, I think the Knicks are going to live with anybody, like any outcome where it's not Mitchell or Garland killing them. I think they're just going to live with it because I just
Garland's
don't.
been terrible against you guys, by the way. Like, I don't have stats.
He started out
but, like,
crazy hot last game. He was cooking Brunson.
Yeah,
was
but
pretty
Garland, the trick to beating Garland is the same trick it used to be to beating Steph Curry. And then Steph Curry got muscle and it changed. But like, if teams attack Garland, he struggles to do both. Right?
And he's
Garland
also not
is a good defender if he wants to be, but if he defends well, he's not going to shoot well.
He's also not a good. This is weird. Like his ISO scoring numbers are bad. Like really, really bad. And it's weird because his handle is obviously like extremely good. But like I actually thought this last year during the play-in game last year when they played the Hawks. I don't love Trae Young. I'm sure many people know that. But like what I thought was basically the difference in that game was, and this is ultimately like a ton of playoff basketball turns into is just it's teams switching a lot. It's teams like saying, okay, like and it's both ways, right? Like defenses are trying to get you to isolate, and offenses are trying to get isolations onto the weakest defenders. And what I thought in that game was like in those situations, Trae Young is more than happy to like just ISO 15 straight times. And Garland still has this like the point guard in him kick in where he's like, oh, I gotta get a Koro shot here. And it's like there's like 3 minutes left. I don't think you need to get anybody a shot actually, other than yourself. And I think he struggles with that a little bit. From what I've seen anyway. I'm not like I didn't watch the
No. You're right.
But that's kind of what I've gotten from him.
Do you guys remember like early, like mid 2000s, where you had the Chris Paul versus Darren Williams debates?
Yeah.
And like one of the big criticisms of Darren Williams is like where Chris Paul never needed to try to be a point guard, he just like inherently was one. And Darren Williams like would sacrifice something on offense to be a point guard. Not that like the sacrifice was net negative, usually it was net positive. Darren Williams was at one point a great point guard. He was a great facilitator. But I feel like Garland's very similar in that Garland can't do the 3 like key things. He can't do perimeter defense, scoring, and being like a facilitator all at once. And like
More than
most
pick
guys
two
can.
of
That's
three.
fine. Yeah. And
At any
most
given
teams
point.
would rather him be a facilitator and a defender. Right? Because like if Garland's hot from three, you're fucked.
Mhm. But like, and you have Mitchell,
But
so
like,
you don't
Garland's
really.
creating
No.
right. Yeah.
So you don't need him to be like a volume scorer necessarily. But I think like I think if you're the Knicks, like first of all, I just gotta say this. Jared Allen's a really fucking good player. If I have to hear this guy get called a fucking all-star one more time, I'm gonna fucking lose it. Like, give me a fucking break. The guy made an all-star. He got an all-star berth as a fucking injury replacement. This is like the D'Angelo Russell all-star thing. Like, he's
Also,
a
like-
really good player. Like, I'm not even taking that away from him. He's actually much better. He's become much better than I thought he would be. So, like, he's very, very good. But I'm so like every time people are like, I've seen a lot of talk about this series. It's like, well, the Cavs have 4 all-stars. I'm like, what? Like, really? Like, is it so?
Like,
If I
here's
ask you today,
also-
if you're
But
ranking
it
NBA
feels
players,
like it feels
if
like
you're
the
ranking
Hawks,
NBA players, would you like? I want to know if you were ranking NBA players, how many people would be like, oh yeah, Jared Allen, he's been an all-star. Got to put him up with Jalen Brunson. Nobody's fucking
No,
doing
like,
that. Like, stop.
What I will also say is like a giant Evan Mobley fanboy, and having watched the Cavs like all season this season, like even when I was like barely watching basketball because of like personal stuff, I was watching the Cavs. Mobley is the better defensive player, and I don't like. And there could be any stats, like I don't give a shit. Like saying Jared Allen is an all-star often takes away from just how good Evan Mobley is defensively. Like I've not seen a player like him in a very long time.
Well, I think what it is, and this happens all the time, is like there's, you talked about this. Playoff defense is less consistent because I think it's so much more opponent specific, matchup specific. You're making game plans game to game to like, attack various weaknesses. It just changes so much. So versatility is such a key. Whereas in the regular season, it's like we do these 2 or 3 things on defense. That's like our base template, and that's what we do. We do that every game, no matter who we're playing, and that's just what it is. So I always think like anchor bigs who are tremendous defensive players in the regular season often are just more of like 20 to 25 minute a night guys in the playoffs.
Do you think that applies to the Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get to that, but like, I think that like that's so like Allen probably I would venture to guess all of his defensive metrics are like better than Mobley, higher impact, whatever the fuck it is. But like Mobley's also doing stuff that like allows Allen to stay as an anchor big, right? Like because Mobley can take on all these versatile tasks, you don't have to ask more of Allen. And I would say like the difference with the Knicks, I think the Knicks actually have to ask Mitch to do more because Julius, if you told me every single game Julius would be locked in on defense, then it would be a really interesting conversation. But that's not the case with Julius Randle. Julius Randle is not locked in all the time. And last we saw him on an NBA court, he was definitely not locked the fuck in. So hopefully,
Well, I mean, this season they've been starting 3 at best average defenders, right? And Brunson and RJ isn't locked in all the time either. And
RJ's just been bad defensively this year. Like
RJ to me is kind of a key to the series because just like you guys said, Okoro is going to be the guy you live with. I think the Cavs are going to live with RJ.
And I think
the ball.
that's an interesting point because I am curious about this, like how the Cavs might defend this because the Cavs are starting 2 smaller guards. And we saw last game, there were multiple times RJ tried to ISO Mitchell and he tried to take him to the post. And if there's one thing Donovan Mitchell seems to be really good at on defense, it's like you're not going to bully ball him. He's a big, strong dude. But Garland, it seems, is more of an opportunity, I guess. It seems to be something that would be appealing to the Knicks because, when they played the Heat is the best example, but they played the Heat. Like RJ has always gone off against the Heat, and a big reason why is because of Tyler Hero. The Heat have wised up to it, so they don't guard him with Tyler Hero. But the Knicks, especially now with Quentin Grimes being a good screen setter and a connective piece and a guy who can operate in the short roll, they've started to, if you're going to put Hero on Grimes, you can't just hide him. They've started to use him as a screener a lot, and I'm very curious, like if the Cavs do that, right? If they put Garland on Barrett. Or I'm sorry, if they put Garland on Grimes, and you bring Garland to the screen, right? You set a screen with Grimes, and you Do you think the Cavs will switch? If they have a Okoro on Barrett, that's maybe you don't need to switch. He's pretty good at getting over screens. But if you're trying to hide, or if you're trying to put Mitchell on Barrett, right, and put Okoro on Brunson, that seems to me like the kind of thing that could turn the series. I'm curious how you think they would defend that.
Yeah, so Garland's defense with both Allen and Mobley on the court, and then if you had Okoro, even more so, but even without Okoro, with both Mobley and Allen on the court, Garland is incredibly aggressive on pick and rolls. Like, watch him defend pick and rolls when those two are on the court.
He's guarding the screener? Or when he's guarding the screener, yeah.
Yeah, he just blitzes. Like, Garland just blitzes every pick and roll when those two are on the court because he knows, like, Garland is actually, like, pretty fast hands defensively. And so even if he misses his guy, there's some degree of coverage. And if he doesn't miss the guy, he gets the steal. And I also think Garland is better off ball than people give him credit for. Where Garland struggles is when one of those two bigs aren't on the court and he has to deal with the screens. Like, he just gets bullied.
Yeah,
So,
because
like,
it's like when there's two, he can be like you mentioned, just super aggressive. But when there's one, he has to like play to scheme more, and that's a problem.
But even when there's two, right? If you get RJ Barrett going down, so it would come down to, can RJ make the right decision, or can Grimes make the right decision in a 4-on-3? That's where you're betting, and that's really tough against Mobley and Allen.
Yeah. I mean,
the Cavs, really quickly, there's these numbers, right? You can go on NBA.com and see like zone defense versus man-to-man, and the Cavs are weird because if you look at those numbers, it suggests like 98% of all possessions they defend man-to-man. But like, if you actually watch them or like talk to coaches, like they almost don't do man-to-man defense. Because you have Mobley and Allen just sitting in the fucking paint. So like when you look at like the data track, the spatial tracking, it looks like man-to-man because of where they're positioned, but it's not. And that gives teams a lot of issues because Garland and Mitchell, too, will just blitz. Mitchell less so because Mitchell's confident in the post defensively, but Garland blitzes everything. I think in a playoff series, if I'm the Knicks, my goal is to make it so the Cavs stop playing with both Mobley and Allen on the court. Like, that's my goal.
Yeah.
And what would be the most effective? How have teams been successfully able to do that?
Threes. Like Golden State gave us problems in both games. You guys have given us problems on nights where you've shot hot from three. Like JB, I actually think is a great coach. I think he is still developing, but his ability to develop players is underrated. JB's response, though, to going down by like double digits, like 10 points or more, is to go small, and that doesn't work for us. Like it never works. Like we come back because Mitchell's incredible, right? And Garland's a great 3-point shooter, but I don't think that works in the playoffs. So the trick is to like go up early and then force JB to do what he does, which is he'll usually sub out Mobley first and then bring on like Chetty Osman. Or like sometimes he'll go weird and bring on like Lamar Stevens, but I don't think that happens in the playoffs. I think generally it'll be Chetty or it'll be Danny Green, like weirdly towards the end of the season, started getting minutes. Dean Wade has been getting a lot of minutes. So it'll be one of those guys that will come on. And that's when the Cavs are beat. Like if you can keep the lead against that, you've won.
Well, so sorry, Sean, and I will let you go after this. Sorry. The last thing is like just looking at how they used their bigs last game. It seemed like Stevens didn't have a great game last game against the Cavs. Against the Knicks. But I think a lot of Knicks fans would have said, and every time I've watched the Cavs play, they threw Dean Wade on Brunson a lot. They threw Dean Wade on Quickly a lot. That seemed to. I actually thought you guys caused a lot of problems relative to his. I think he ended up with a good stat line, but Quickly, they trapped him in ways that he wasn't used to. It seemed to me like Wade, with his versatility between the 3 and 4, like from my takeaway from watching that game would be he'd be on the top of the pecking order. Is it kind of just dead even between Chetty, him, and Stevens, or is there a pecking order there?
I mean, Right, Dean Wade last season, like, if you took his offense from last season, or really from his entire career mixed with his defense this season, I actually think Dean Wade's starting for the Cavs. I think he's starting over Okoro. The problem this season is since he's come back from the injury, he can't shoot. And so it really depends on what they need at a given moment. Like you guys said, you think the Knicks live with Okoro shooting a three. If I'm defending the Cavs, I don't defend Dean Wade. Like, and I love Dean Wade. I think Dean Wade likely next year takes that starting three spot as he recovers more from his injury. But he isn't shooting well. And so often it will go after Okoro, it'll probably be Chetty. And then I think Dean Wade probably takes the remainder of those minutes from Stevens. Stevens started the season really hot and really hasn't continued. Okoro's also interesting. Like, if Okoro and Wade are both off, so, like, for example, if the Cavs lose 2 out of the first 3 games, it would not shock me if JB went back to Karis LeVert at the 3. Because I think if the Cavs are losing games, it's going to be because they just cannot keep up scoring.
Yeah. That's I think this series is going to be pretty defensive. I think they're going to be pretty low scoring games. The last game was the only aberration. I mean, the first game too is another weird one because it's like Kevin Love made 8 threes. I don't know what the hell we're supposed to do with that. Like, they don't have Kevin Love anymore. So, like, that's its own thing. And it's just like, you can't legislate for that. But I thought the 2 games they played in New York were those are the games that I expect to see in the playoffs. Like, I mean, one of them was just like that weird game where they called like 17 carries and it was 92-81.
That was the worst game I've watched all season. Even though it was close, it was a terrible game.
Yeah, it was like a very weird game. But then the last game was like, I think it was like 106, 103 or whatever the hell it was, the end of regulation. But like it was a kind of a back and forth, and like the Cavs would push out a lead, then the Knicks would come back. They'd push out a lead, the Cavs come back. It was kind of a back and forth. Ended up very close to the end. That's the kind of game I expect to see. This is from Jordan Bubb. What would surprise you more, RJ having a big series or Mobley making his threes at a good rate in this series?
Mobley's a terrible 3-point shooter. He's one of the worst 3-point shooters for like the number of shots taken. I think the Cavs actually go away from that pretty significantly. The Cavs have sets where Mobley doesn't need to shoot, but he stands out at the line. I doubt Mobley shoots a lot of threes.
I am very, very worried about RJ Barrett in this series. I honestly would be shocked if he has a big series. And I think this is a terrible matchup for him. Everybody's talking about like, well, they don't have wings, so it can be a good matchup for him. What is RJ Barrett good at offensively, right? He's good at like one very specific thing, volume driving to the rim. And in consequence, because of that, he gets to the line a decent amount where he's not a particularly great free throw shooter, but he's not the worst free throw shooter. So, you can...
You got league average.
Yeah, you can. He's just under league average.
He's the guy the Cavs are going to live with.
Yeah.
Like, if he's taking the shots, I think the Cavs are in a good spot.
I would agree that if he's taking the shots, the Cavs are in a good spot. And I think since he's returned from... Or not returned, but since March 1st, I believe he's shooting something like 23% from 3. His threes of late especially have looked just bad. Like, not even like, oh, he's getting unlucky. They just look terrible on almost all of them. There was a thread that dropped yesterday by an account called it's very funny. It's NBA Stats, that is at sports_mediocre. It's a thread about RJ Barrett. I like hate doing this. I just like, if you read this thread, it is probably the most damning thread I've seen about RJ Barrett's play this season. I will send it to both of you right now on Twitter DMs since I can't do it on here if you want to look through it. But like, he's just been such struggle all year. Not even all year, but especially since like he came back from that injury that he had in December. He's had some moments, he's had some stretches where you're like, okay, maybe he's turning the corner, but it just has not happened for him consistently. And I will say this, like, I did not give a shit that the Knicks lost the last 2 games of the season. I didn't particularly care that they were mailing it in defensively. I didn't care about any of that because I was like, you know what? They clinched the 5 seed. There's literally nothing to be gained from winning or losing these games. Let's just get let's let them get whatever offensive numbers they want and, just stay healthy and we'll call it a day. I did not like what I saw from RJ Barrett in those 2 games, which I know it makes me a hypocrite because I'm like, I don't care about anybody else, but I do care about what RJ Barrett did. Like, in that game yesterday against the Pacers, which was the last game of the season, the final score was 141-136. I'm sure if you looked around the box scores in the NBA yesterday, there were all kinds of weird dudes getting crazy numbers. Theo Pinson had a triple-double. Cam Thomas had 46. Peyton Pritchard had a 30-point triple-double. You had all these guys putting up numbers. I didn't even think Emmanuel quickly had a very good game yesterday, and he managed to put up 38 and 6. Like, the point is, if you were just out there, it was easy to get numbers yesterday. And somehow in that context, RJ Barrett had, where did he go? 7 of 16 from the field for 18 points. I think he had 1 rebound, a couple of assists. Like, I'm worried about this guy because I don't think what he's been this year is what he's going to be long term. I do think that he's still going to become a solid starting wing in the league. But like that, it doesn't matter what I think or what anybody thinks his ceiling is long term. For this season, like, it is what it is.
So can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
Because like my view is the Cavs are going to live with RJ Barrett. Period. They will just live with him being on the court. Do you think Thibs said at some point in the series, if this series is 2-2 going into Game 6, or Game 5, sorry. Do you think Thibs says, you know what, RJ, you're going to play 15 minutes a night, and we're going to go 3 guards?
Just want to let you go first. Sorry.
Will he do that? I think I would do that from game 1. I don't know if it's 15 minutes. I don't know if it's 20 minutes. I would just do it. I would tell him if you, I know the NBA is weird and pulling a starter is a big thing. And he's got 4 years, 107 million owed to him after the season, which is its own thing you have to manage, internally and how he's viewed around the league. I get that. I really think you need to have a conversation and be like, look, you're going to start. I'm going to see how it goes. But the reality is we don't have a margin for error in this series. And this is also not a series. This series is a series the Knicks can win, which means you almost need to be even more ruthless if you're Tibbs than you would be if it was like a 1-8 matchup, right? Where you're like, all right, we're just going to get our ass kicked anyway.
I think for both teams, the margin for error this series is 0. Both teams need to be perfect from game 1. This is not a series where game 1 can be a feel-it-out game.
Every game matters in the
need to be
series,
perfect.
right? And I'm really worried about RJ. I hope I'm wrong, and I really do because it would be fucking fantastic if I was. But his play this year has just been so uninspiring. His shooting of late, and this is the thing, right? We're talking about Okoro, don't have to worry about him. Dean Wade, don't have to worry. What team is worried about RJ Barrett from behind the 3-point line right now? That guy has hit 1 3 in the last fucking 3 months or something. He's been brutal from behind the arc. And
he's also not great defensively.
No, he's been really bad defensively this year.
I don't think Okoro's a better player than RJ Barrett. I'm not an idiot. But I do think right now Okoro is playing better than RJ Barrett. And if I had to pick one right now to have in the playoffs, I would pick Okoro. Not long term, but right now, I would pick
RJ. RJ's just not I really am just so sick and tired of talking about him and everything about him right now because it's I've made what I think I've expressed how I feel about him as much as I possibly could in the regular season. And I'm just at a point where I'm we had 82 regular season games. Whatever mitigate, he got hurt at this time. He signed a contract in the offseason, so he couldn't work out and all. Whatever the mitigating circumstances, there are 82 games. There's a plenty of fucking time there. That's a lot of games. It's a lot of time. That's 6 months of the year. There's plenty of time there for mitigating circumstances to not mitigate that much anymore. And at the end of the day, your resume, your body of work is your body of work. His body of work this year has not been good. And I think I don't begrudge anybody who still is a believer in RJ Barrett moving forward. at the same time, if you are a believer in him moving forward, then you should be able to look at his play this year and be like, this isn't good enough. Because if this is like, if you believe in him, it can't be like because you're like, well, if he just gives us this every year, we're good. Like, no, it's got to be better. And to your point, like, I could deal with the offensive issues if the defense was anywhere near where it's been when he's actually good, like when he's actually been good on defense. And it's just not been. I mean, again, like I haven't posted these. I have not posted them, at least on Twitter. I posted them in our Discord. I have like 3 sequences from the last Cavs game where if you just watch RJ Barrett, it's like, are you drunk? Like, what is going on here? And on defense, it's like he can't close. He can't make a good closeout right now. Anytime he closes somebody out, they're immediately blowing by him, and it's kicking off driving kicks. And it's like,
You think that's more technique related or weight related?
both. At some, I don't, because I used to feel like his technique on closeouts was really good, and now it's just atrocious. And on top of that, like, he's moving slowly. I mean, they're like the Knicks scheme, and this is where like I won't kill. Like, there's stuff where he doesn't get out to a shooter to contest effectively enough, but it's also like it's not because he's out of position, because it's our scheme. Like, you're packing the paint, right? Like you're basically having your wings have 1 foot in the paint and trying to get them to spray out to shooters, and then it's on them to go close out. And like that's a lot of ground to cover. And the way he's moving right now, it's not an easy rotation for him. And even if he's able to run the guy off the line, like I said, it's a blow by. The guy's just getting straight to the rim. And on top of that, you're not getting like second and third efforts. Like if he gets blown by, it's not like if somebody covers for him, RJ's busting his gut to like go, make up for it in another rotation. He's just kind of like lost. And it's just really frustrating to watch, especially when you're like as an example, like I don't think Josh Hart played well yesterday, right? But like 1, I don't care because yesterday didn't matter. And 2, I've seen Josh Hart play really fucking well and really fucking hard on defense basically since the second he got to New York. And like I don't care that Quentin Grimes and Quickly didn't give a shit on defense yesterday because I've watched them for a full season give a shit on defense. And like
your guys' guards, like guards, small wing type players, are why, like, if I'm as a Cavs fan, it's why I'm scared. Like, right? It's you guys have just so many good defensive guards.
One of them doesn't
like they
even
can
play,
also
right?
shoot. Yeah.
What about? I mean, sorry. With McBride, I think that's an interesting question on its own. To answer your original question, Jordan, I think that there are. I think it's very possible RJ Barrett ends up with maybe not 15 minutes, but closer to 20 and becomes the. There's 4 good players in that 2 to 3 spot, right, for the Knicks. You have Quickly, Grimes, RJ, and Hart. One of Quickly and Grimes is usually going to finish for shooting reasons, for spacing reasons. Usually, whoever's better out of Quickly and Grimes that day, whoever has it going, and that also is like sometimes, and then sometimes both of them will. Grimes is, I think, pretty safe bet at this point because he's shooting 48% from 3 and they're going to need it. So I think he's going to close most games. To the extent that they need secondary playmaking, which depending on Randall's health may be even more important. But I think that in terms of closing games, I'm almost at the point where it becomes Hart versus Quickly and Grimes. And I'm not like, unless they really, so they have done this. Like, as much as Tibbs is known for rigid rotations or whatever, there have been plenty of games where he's closed with Hart or Grimes and Quickly together. And that's because Hart does a lot. Like, to Schwinn's point now, I'm going to have a rebuttal to some of Schwinn's pessimism on RJ. Or sorry, not pessimism long term, but kind of the assessment.
I mean, you could call it pessimism long term at this point. Like I just this season is like blowing my mind watching him. He looks like a fucking.
But I do think you had higher expectations of him long term. So for me, I've always had the expectation that he was going to be something like at peak, something like Golden State Andrew Wiggins, which maybe like Andrew Wiggins shoots 38% from 3, so maybe that's not valid either. But like my point is, like, I've always seen his ceiling is like more of like a high end role player to fringe all-star. What I'm making is, so like to me, like this season isn't earth shattering, the point I'm making is that to your point, Jordan, like the Knicks have a lot of really good. Josh Hart has been like terrific. He does a lot of what RJ does in terms of rim pressure. He doesn't really he's thought of as as kind of a glue guy, but he gets to the rim. A lot of it is transition. It's not the same in the half court, but I think he takes close to 40% of shots at the rim. He shoots close to 70% at the rim. He does not take enough open threes. He pump fakes out of way too many of them. That's really the only one thing where I'm like, shoot more. But he's been terrific, and that is the biggest. And then to the point, in the thread you said, Schwinn, I think a lot of those do compare to other players in the Knicks, and I think the fact that RJ is kind of ranking low does say a lot about how good those other players have been. The guys that you're comparing him to is Emmanuel Quickley, who should win Sixth Man of the Year. If he doesn't win it, it's for a guy who last year was averaging 22 and whatever in Indiana, right? If you have Josh Hart, who is like the archetype role player, who's just been a massive plus minus. If the other guy is Quentin Grimes, who's shooting just insane from three after the All-Star break, while providing elite point of attack. I think it does say as much, like that thread at least that you sent says as much about them as it does about him. What I will go back to is, Jordan, like I think it's going to be determined by, and I will agree with Schwinn, I don't see him flicking a switch on defense without like an off season of kind of rework and a reset. But I do think if he can attack Garland successfully, and you said, and both of you mentioned this, right? Like what's the key to attacking Garland? They're going to blitz, right? They're not going to let Garland sit there and take RJ Barrett post ups, or even let him get a head full of steam and drive downhill. The question with RJ on offense, the biggest one, the shots are going to come and go. I'm a little bit higher on the shooting than Schwinn is because he's a decent free throw shooter. He's had good shooting. I think he's just kind of in a rut right now when it comes to shooting. But I think what it's going to come down to is if he gets those switches or if he gets those opportunities to attack downhill, can he and he gets blitzed by Evan Mobley and Jared Allen or right? Or even a guy like Okoro, is he going to make the right read? Or is he going to force up a shot? That is I think the biggest low-hanging fruit, the thing that's held him back the most is if you look at the Knicks drive stats, he averages actually he scores on the highest percentage of drives on the Knicks, even more than Randall, Quickly, Brunson, but he's only shooting about 54, 55 true shooting on those. The reason is he only passes out of about 27% of those. If you look at the other three, they all pass. Even Brunson, who's been maligned at times, despite being a super efficient paint player, he passes out of 40% of his drives. RJ is at 27%. Can he pass? I do think he's improved at that a lot because that true shooting, by the way, was at 52, 53% a few months ago. So he's improved in doing that. Can he make good decisions in the paint instead of forcing things up against Mobley and Allen? Can he make your help defenders close out, especially if he has guys like Quickly, Grimes, and even Randall or Hart in the corner? Is he willing to do that? That I think will determine, as long as he's not a complete just screen door on defense, which I don't think he will be, but that I think will determine whether he has a case to stay on at all. But I think the other thing is like I said, like neither him nor Hart are great shooters. Like I think closing with the RJ Hart lineup is kind of tough. Like Hart shoots a high percentage. He pump fakes a lot of open threes. Like I don't think that he's quite a shooter. I don't know if the Cavs leave him open. I do know that with a closeout, he's going to provide it. So I think that you might so those are the two things. Like if you have to close with Hart, if Hart's playing well, that limits RJ a little bit. And the other thing is like But if I think what can get him on the floor is like if in those screen situations when you have Grimes screening for him, or even Quickly, I think Quickly's capable of it. Is he just that good that it's just the Cavs have no answer? That's what could keep him on. And I think there's a non-zero chance that happens.
So I guess my part of what motivated my question was when we've played you guys, one of the things I see RJ do over and over and over again is underestimate Mobley's length when he passes out of drives. Mobley has
It's not just
stopped
the Cavs,
multiple.
by the way.
Yeah,
They've done a
no,
lot.
I believe that, but like it is endemic when you guys play the Cavs. Like it really is. Like RJ cannot, for the life of him, account for Mobley's length. Like he doesn't do it, and that's not only RJ.
Did you
like
see
a
the shot
lot
he
of
took
players. Yeah,
Did you see the shot he took in the last game where he
yeah.
drove in and Mobley's right in front of him and he's just like,
The floater. Oh,
Yeah.
that
yeah,
was that was
Yeah.
one where you get kicked off the court of the park. They're just like,
that was
nah.
crazy.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
I saw that, I was just like,
Well-
I couldn't believe that.
So, like, what I will say, and listen, I wanted Hart on the Cavs. The Cavs are why the Knicks had to pay what they did for Hart, because the Cavs were in for him. Like, they raised the price by bidding. I think Hart's really, really good, and I think Hart provides problems for the Cavs that RJ does not. Like, the problem I think RJ is going to have in a playoff series is that maybe I'm wrong, and like I'm not going to lie and say I watched the Knicks like a ton. I've watched you guys 15, 20 times this season. RJ does not seem to me like a player that's just going to thrive without the ball. Like that doesn't like is he better without the ball on the court than Josh Hart is without the ball?
That's a separate. I do think that's a separate.
Well,
I think RJ is actually better without the ball,
isn't
but Josh Hart is a great off-ball player. I think that's part of it.
Right. But it isn't, right? Like, I think the Cavs would fucking love if RJ Barrett was playing 30 minutes a night in the playoffs. Like, I think the Cavs are like, great. Because, like, these are two really tight teams. Like, I think Mitchell's better than Brunson, but I think Brunson is substantially better than Garland. And I think Mobley is a unicorn. But, like, you guys have a much better bench, and you have a much better group of just guards, like, beyond your starting two guards. And I think that matters quite a bit in the playoffs. So I think it's really the really closely matched. I mean, to me, like, from what I've seen in our games against you guys, if I'm Thibs, like, RJ is not going to play that, because if he does, I think the Cavs take advantage. Like, to me, that is one of the keys to the series is how much does Thibs rely on things that just don't work against the Cavs.
Do you think they take advantage more of him on defense, trying to hunt him with Garland or Mitchell, or do you think it's more just leaving him open?
It's just the fact that he's on the court versus, like, I don't think RJ's a bad player. I came on your guys' podcast this summer and said I thought it was great that contract the Knicks gave him. Like, even given this year, like, I think RJ is going to be a really good pro. But right now, like, compared to the other options, the best chance the Cavs have is RJ playing a ton of minutes.
Yeah, and I actually will say this. I don't know how Tim's going to manage it in terms of, fucking 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. I do think that he is going to, if RJ does not pick it up, if he does not play better than he has throughout a lot of the regular season, I think his minutes are almost definitely going to get cut. Because the main thing is this, when RJ is not playing well, if he's not scoring well, what is he giving you? He's not giving you anything this year if he's not scoring well. He's not rebounding that well. He's not working hard defensively. He's not passing that well. He's not making good decisions or quick decisions when he has the ball.
And these are all things that Hart has been doing at a high level.
There are things that Hart does. There are things Grimes does. There are things Quickly does. Like, he has three guys who have value. Like, Quickly and Grimes and Hart, they can have poor shooting games and they can still help you win a basketball game because they do things that are not just related to scoring. And they're not just related to what I can do when I have the ball in my hands. Like, there's intrinsic value in a guy like Grimes or a guy like Quickly, especially, right? Where even on nights where they're not shooting well, teams aren't going to defend them like they're not good shooters. That's
Quickly as a Cavs fan terrifies me. Like, Quickly to me is a guy that I just don't want to see.
Well, it seems like he terrified Bickerstaff. Like, it seemed like they'd scouted him so well. Like, I've never seen him, like, he's developed really well against pressure. And I thought the Cavs did a great job of springing traps. I think Dean Wade has tendencies scouted well. He still ended up with a good game, but I think that it seems like at least the bigger staff, he's high on the scouting report. I guess on what I was gonna say was when it comes to I think it's really the question. I think for part, and I'll throw this to Schwinn real quick. I do think that hunting out Garland is going to be a big deal for the Knicks in the series. If you don't agree, then definitely state why. But if you do think that's a thing, do you think the other Knicks options are as capable of that? Hart, Quickly, and the reason, I think Quickly is a better offensive player than RJ. I do think he thrives a little bit more at beating slower defenders than Garland, who's his size and quicker, and who I think that when he's engaged is like a pretty good defender. Do you think that the bully balls, because there's a reason they attacked Hero with RJ, right? Do you think that Hart or Quickly or even Grimes could replicate that the same way? Because I think that to me is the thing that RJ has in his corner even at this point.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm just not. I'm really sick of talking about RJ Barrett because I just find him to be the most. It's the one thing about this team right now that I'm just not positive about. I'm not optimistic about. I'm not upbeat about. That's it. Everybody else, I'm at least neutral on. That with RJ, I'm just I don't see it this year, man. I just don't see it. I think this is a terrible matchup for him because he has no pull-up shooting game. He has no mid-range game. So yeah, it's great that he
can get him switched on to Garland.
But he still has to drive at Allen. He still has to drive at Mobley.
And make the decision.
Yeah, and I just don't trust him to do that. And quite frankly, who would I trust if I'm gonna be trying to mismatch hunt Darius Garland? Would I rather trust Emmanuel Quickly to do that or RJ Barrett? That's a pretty simple answer for me.
So
it's a very
can I be honest? I think you guys may be asking the wrong question about who hunts Garland. I don't think that's the right question. I think the right question is
anyway.
Well,
if they put a Coro on him, he's better at getting over screens, right? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
But I don't think that's the question. I think the question is, right, if Garland gets beat on the side Mobley's also defending, it doesn't matter. Right? Because Mobley can reach out and stop a three. It doesn't matter.
Well, he's helping off
the trick is gonna but the trick is gonna be who gets open on Allen's side. Who are you getting open on that side of the court? And how are you doing that? Because Allen can't close out from three like Mobley can. And I think, the way teams attack Garland is they try to force him to defend on Allen's side and then try to get an open three from it. And that's a lot harder than it looks because you have a Coro. You have Mitchell, who's a bad defender, but he can defend pretty well in the post. And then when you get to the bench, I can't stand watching Karis LeVert play basketball. Karis LeVert can use his length. He really knows how to use his length defensively.
I got you right here.
Yeah. No. Listen. I think Karis LeVert is one of the most annoying players to root for, but he knows how to use length defensively. And to me, the question isn't who can beat Garland; it's who can beat Garland on Allen's side of the court.
And I also think this. This is something we saw in, let's say RJ gets off to a good start, right? Let's just say he gets off to a good start and he's cooking Garland. And so the Cavs are all right, we got to switch up the matchup. So they put Mitchell on him, right? To me, that becomes now so much less of, and we saw this when we played the Hawks a couple years ago. Sometimes you don't need to go hunt a mismatch. Sometimes you need your guy to beat the bad defender. And the most encouraging thing I think that we've seen over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games because of various circumstances is Quentin Grimes get more usage. And I am very, very optimistic now that if there's any point where you're trying to hide Garland on Grimes, I am hunting that. I'm not running a screen for him. Maybe I'm trying to attack Garland off ball. Maybe I'm trying to catch him ball watching. Or maybe I just throw it to Grimes and tell him, go cook this guy. But that is kind of how I'm thinking about the series, where 2 years ago, we let Trae Young stay on the court without punishing him on the defensive end at all. And guys like Garland and that are offensively as talented as he is, they're going to stay on the floor no matter what, basically, right? What you have to do is you got to make it painful for them to stay on the court. You can't give them a free ride. It can't be a free lunch for Darius Garland. And I think that is where I think it falls. That is like a Tibbs thing to me. It's very much a Tibbs thing, and it's also a personnel selection thing. Like, if RJ is struggling, you now have the caliber of players in depth that it's not excusable to just stick with him. And that's not just RJ, by the way. That could be Grimes.
Yeah, well,
that could be Hart.
so,
that could be Quickly. That can be any of these guys other than basically Brunson. And Brunson won't struggle because Brunson's and if he does struggle, it's probably going to be because Okoro's just a tough matchup and blah, 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 blah. It's not going to be because Brunson's pissing himself or something. It's a totally different kind of ball game there, right?
Not to knock on wood after.
Yeah.
Well, so right, playoff basketball is not NBA 2K, right? It's not you hunting a player isn't just about the one-on-one matchup. It's about the 5-on-5 matchup. How do you pin the other team's players away from the player you're trying to hunt? And the Cavs have been really good this season at preventing that. I think you guys have given us the most trouble, out of the Big East teams absent Milwaukee. You guys have given us the most trouble, especially when Randall was healthy. I knew you guys won that last game. I'm willing to take those shooting numbers in a 7-game series against you guys as a Cavs fan. I think come hell or high water, Mitchell's the best player on the court, and I'm willing to take those numbers. But when Randall's been healthy or when we haven't played in shootouts, you guys have done a really good job at pinning our players away from whoever you're hunting. If you can do that in the playoff series, which I think is hard, but if you can do that in the playoff series, and I think having guys like Hart or Quickly that can do multiple things on offense, that's your path to beating us, is not necessarily matchup hunting, but putting your offense in a position where if you want to matchup hunt, it is possible.
And so what are the Cavs made counters to how do they avoid getting Garland or whoever it is that might be getting?
They do a lot of pre-rotating from what I've seen. So
pre-rotating and Mobley, and Evan Mobley.
That's that's what I've seen. I don't think this is some defensive master class of oh my god, we have 15 different no, it's just Mobley exists.
Yeah.
And then they're just very cognizant of okay, let's a wing got switched on to Garland while they're trying to get the ball there. Let's get a bigger defender over there. I think I don't think it's it's a credit to them. Yeah, it's a credit to their coaching staff and the players that they can just it's simplicity and they're able to execute it. But so it's not really. I don't mean to take away from Bickerstaff or anything when I'm saying it's very simple. I think it is really simple. They just but they do it well, which is all you really need to do.
Yeah, well, Mobley at any time, if he is positioned in the right spot on the court, which happens very frequently, is the cover for 3 other defenders. His length is in his intelligence. It's funny, Mobley, and we do this with the athletes a lot, where we say, oh, it's their athletic ability, done. But Hasheem Thabeet was shit in the NBA. And he was more or less the same size Mobley is, but he was a shit player. Mobley's really intelligent. And I think, again, it's not rocket science from a coaching staff when you have a player like that. But, again, this is what I mean, where the Knicks have historically been good at getting Garland to defend on the same side of the court that Allen defends on. And not that Allen's an easy matchup either, but Allen can't cover for Garland's very aggressive defense like Mobley can. And to me, that's what the series comes down to. Can you guys get the ball and get Garland over to that side of the court? I think that is much harder with RJ Barrett. I think RJ, frankly, RJ Barrett's off-ball ability just isn't what Josh Hart's is. It isn't what Emmanuel Quickly's is. And that off-ball ability is what is going to be really important.
Yeah.
And to me, that's
Yeah. Go ahead. No, finish.
Well, I was going to say, to me, that's how the Cavs try to beat you guys, is they say, Mobley, you follow Garland wherever Garland is on the court, right? That is a set rotation that no matter where Garland is, Mobley's on the same side of the court. And that lets Garland blitz as aggressively as he wants and gives him cover.
Yeah. I was just going to respond to this. This is from Paul. He had a message before this. For as bad as RJ has played this year, he's better at creating offensive advantages than quickly Grimes' Hart. Grimes can't cook guys like that. And they followed up with this. He's much better at creating rim pressure in the half court than all those guys. He is. I just don't know how valuable that is when you already have Jalen Brunson, when you already have a guy like Randall who gets into the paint.
I think he's
quite
better at
frequently.
creating advantages than quickly.
I don't think so, but I think he's better at creating rim pressure. I think he could be better at creating advantages than quickly, but he's not processing the game at a high enough speed to leverage his penetration to do that. So,
so again, this is a Cavs fan talking here, but like, I would much rather have RJ Barrett creating rim pressure than Jalen Brunson. Like, I don't care what the numbers say.
The question is quickly, and if you have a Okoro on Brunson, and we're trying to, I think that's more the question, right? So.
I also like,
but like even then, like if that's the situation, if that is the question, the Cavs I think have won this series, right?
Yeah,
right. If the question is like, how are we creating rim pressure with RJ versus quickly versus Grimes, like that's just the series the Cavs want to play in.
Yeah, you don't like. First of all, I don't know if your goal in this series should be like we need to get rim pressure. That wouldn't be my goal if I was playing the Cavs right now. Like, I'm not going to be like, yeah, let's fucking challenge these fucking gigantic freaks of nature down low that they have. And that, like, you know, on top of it, Mobley's like seems like a very intelligent defender on top of being extremely athletically gifted. Like, I don't see how that's the play. Like, I'm fine. I think the Knicks do have advantages inside in terms of like their front court has multiple pieces that can be problematic for them. I think Randall's physicality is an issue for Mobley. If Randall is right, that's a matchup he has to win. And like we haven't even talked about this part of it. But
they'll
like,
stick Allen on. Stick Allen on Randall. I think you're still right. I don't think that changes. But
well,
I think that's
still that. Yeah, I think that's still a win for the Knicks because Mobley is a great roamer defensively. But if he has to defend Mitchell Robinson, granted, Mitchell Robinson is very limited offensively. But guess what? If you let him hang out by the rim and you don't put a body on him because Mobley is, you know, he wants to go do other things defensively, Mitch is going to fucking destroy. Yeah, he's going to absolutely destroy them on the glass. And we saw that in the last game when Mobley kind of had to play the 5, right? When he was matched up on Mitch, Mitch and Hartenstein had a fucking field day on the glass. They were killing the offensive glass in that game. I
actually think Hartenstein for you guys. Yeah, he was a Cavs, so like, and maybe I'm just being over here. I don't know
how that guy bounced around the league this much.
He scares me in a different way than he scares me in a different way than Randall does. Randall like is an individual matchup scares me. Hartenstein just like that to me is the scary guys you guys have. Like
he just juices things. He juices the defense, juices the offense. His energy, his passing. Yeah. I do kind of take a little bit of a tangent, but
related. Hold on. Before we go on a tangent, I think we can answer this before we go. This is from Knicks Tape. This is going beyond the series, but do you guys think that Knicks fans have accelerated RJ's timeline because they think we're one piece away from a title? I don't know if we're one piece away from a title. I do think you're one piece away from being a very dangerous team. So maybe that means like you are one piece away from a title, but I've said this a lot. Like I'm really not that interested in making a big bold move to replace RJ Barrett with like a McCall Bridges. But let's say that, and we're not going to get McCall Bridges. So just think of like a player of a player of that ilk. Let's put it that way. If the Knicks lose this series, or if they win this series and they lose in the second round, whatever it is, but if RJ Barrett struggles and that ultimately feels like a reason for why your team doesn't go as or the team season ends wherever it ends, I think like. As much as I would like to continue to play the long game and like believe that, you know, the decision making and all these different warts that he has, he can overcome them and, you know, he morphs into a higher level player, impact player. I think as a front office, as an organization, that is it's a very dangerous, not dangerous game, but it's a very thin line there between reason And like we saw this with Portland, right? I'm not saying we're nowhere near that timeline, but it's like for like 15 years, it was like, well, we can't break up Dame and CJ. We can't break up Dame and CJ. And it's like, okay, but like there's only that's like you're only going to be so good. There's just no chance that you're going to compete with these two guys. And this is not the same exact concept here, but it's like if you're at a point with RJ, and like I understand he's 22 and he's the youngest rotation guy in the team, and blah blah blah, it's number 3 overall pick. If you're looking to improve this team, he's just the guy based on play this year that is the easiest one to upgrade in the rotation. And that could be internally or it can be externally, but like there are options for you to do it. So I don't know. I don't know if Knicks fans have accelerated RJ's timeline. I do get I do think how good this team has become, and not just how good this team has become because of additions like Jalen Brunson and Hartenstein in free agency, but like you've seen Mitchell Robinson, I think, bounce back from what was last year was like very much a recovery year from him and it was very up and down. I think he's been a lot more consistent this year. I think you've obviously seen really significant leaps from Emmanuel Quickley and Quentin Grimes. Obviously, Randall bounced back, but like because of all of these things, one, I think you have to ask yourself, okay, are these things repeatable? The good things that happened this year, are they repeatable? I would look at them and I would feel not only are they repeatable, but like even if I were to say Randall would regress a little bit, which I'm not sure why I initially would, at least in the regular season, I don't really view I don't think Quickley and Grimes are volatile. Like I think they're gonna do what they do. I don't view Brunson as volatile. I don't view Hartenstein as volatile. I don't view what Mitch does as volatile. I think those are like things that you can bank on. So then to me, the question is, well, is the volatility upside potential that it exists with RJ Barrett, is that more valuable to your team moving forward to eventually become a title contender versus maybe making a more aggressive play to upgrade him, be it via trade? I mean, it'd have to be via trade, basically. And maybe attaching picks and whatever it is to it. That's a really hard question to answer right now, especially not without knowing like who the potential upgrade or person could be. But like that is where I don't know if Knicks fans have accelerated RJ's timeline. I think how good the team is naturally accelerates his timeline. And because of it, like if we finished 11th this year, we finished in the plan and missed the playoffs, I feel like there would be a lot more, even if RJ had a struggle like the same season he had this year, he's struggling. I think there'd be a lot more patience and understanding of like, okay, well, this wasn't a great year from him, but let's, there's no need to trade him. We actually shouldn't trade him. Like I think because of how good the Knicks are, it's a lot harder and you don't want to risk being stagnant. I think that's the worst thing to do in any sport, is not trying to capitalize on momentum and keep trying to incrementally improve at the very least. And so for me, that's where that comes from with Knicks fans and RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple in the sense that if you had a plus defender who could knock down open threes in that position consistently, how much better is this team, right? Forget the star, like OG Anunoby. I think you and me are both on. Like he is an all NBA level defender, but you and me are both on. Like this is not some star, but you have a guy who's going to be able to defend multiple positions. The bonus he gives you is that if they got him, it would allow someone like Randall to like. What I really want, I think, the biggest game changer, more than replacing RJ on the wing, is somebody who, even for 5 to 10 minutes a game, allows the Knicks to play Randall at the 5. I think Brunson in a 5-out offense, you've talked about this, Schwinn. Brunson in a 5-out offense, or Quickley, or Randall, right, is just it's very hard to defend. We don't have Steph Curry, but that was clearly a game changer for the Warriors. But I think it's as simple as, like, yeah, it has accelerated the timeline, but life's not fair. And that's why I said earlier, like, a lot of what we're talking about with RJ is in the context of he has really good teammates who have improved, more than like he's just some bust, right? He hasn't. I don't even know if I'd use the word plateau, because I think his growth is pretty multidimensional. Like the efficiency, I think he's still shooting career high in efficiency, which says as much about where he's coming from. But like, he's shooting. One example, he's shooting 39% from 3 to 10 feet in the paint. That is really bad. He was at 29% last year. He did not have it the year before. So like he's developed a little bit of that floater game. The decision making is still up and down. He's improved as he was a bad finisher at the rim, or at least below average. He's improved in those things. So I think if you look at his long-term development, there's not emergency bells, but just because of how good everyone else is, that's the thing. And then I think the other thing is that
Look, let me just ask you: you don't get concerned, like, so this is generally just thought of, I think, colloquially, or not colloquially, but like general logic that people have talked about is steals, blocks, rebounds. Those numbers specifically show a level of like activity, athleticism. Does it not concern you that we're at like RJ's 22? He's had declining steal and block rates now into his 4th season. And then just anecdotally watching him, like he looks, I think it's safe to say that you would agree, he looks stiffer than he has previously. Like that doesn't concern you?
Um, the latter concerns me more than the former. Emmanuel Quickley has had, I think if you put Emmanuel Quickley in a more aggressive scheme, he's averaging not 2.5 steals a game, but in that neighborhood. So he's not, RJ Barrett is not the only person with depressed event generation numbers on this team. I think even Hart's have decreased since he's come here, and that's his forte. So I'll say that. On the other hand, yeah, I do think like with his ability, like you draft a 6'7" guy built like a tank to do these things, and he like those are like okay, like I get it. Like people have bad shooting seasons. Mikal Bridges had a bad shooting season when he came out of the draft. It doesn't always matter long term. I think it's a fair concern. My point is more like, do I think he can be a league average shooter? Yes. He can get to the rim pretty easily. I think his decision making isn't great. I think that it's still. I have seen other players that are really bad at it. I don't think it's like anything that it's like a red flag. It's just like I think it's more right now they don't do it. But I also think it is to Jordan's point. They have like he is a guy who gets to the rim a lot, but isn't great at converting. Like he converts those at a decent rate. Like he is the guy in the rotation. It's not so much that he's the worst player in the rotation. It is that if you replace him with a guy who might cost a fraction, like if you replace him with Harrison Barnes, like I've been an RJ defender, I can argue that if you replace him with Harrison Barnes, the Knicks aren't better off. Like it's not a game changing thing. And obviously for the long term future, I wouldn't trade RJ for Harrison Barnes. But like right now, like to your point, so I would agree with you. Those things are concerning, and those are things you look for prospects when they're struggling. I think Chun, that's a good thing to bring up. But it's the eye test more than like the numbers, because the numbers are depressed for everyone. Like on this, because the Knicks they're not a turnover, they're not a trap heavy team. I did want to ask this to both of you because it's something I've been thinking about, and I think it's relevant to both teams. When you talk about, so the Knicks are a great rebounding team. I put a thread up a couple of days ago, and I had kind of one thing I was thinking of is like when I'm trying to describe the Knicks offense, they're great at offensive rebounding and they're great at getting paint touches, largely because of Brunson, but they do have RJ Barrett has played a part in that. Obviously, Randall is kind of a wrecking ball. Quickly has improved massively, but they also have great rebounders, right? They're a great paint touch team. They're a great offensive rebounding team. And I'm trying to figure out, which way does the causality go? And I would also throw this to Jordan, because when you look at the Cavs, right, and they're a poor deep rebounding team, it sounds like even with Allen, how much do you think is the fact that they have, I think Mitchell's been better than he was in Utah in defense. They don't have great perimeter defenders besides really Okoro. Do you think that the perimeter defense is the reason? Because, what causes offensive rebounds, right? One school of thought is you don't box out. The other school of thought is you can't box out because you're helping out on dribble penetrators. I'm interested just in general, philosophically, what you think is the bigger cause and effect, but also Jordan specific to this Cleveland team. What do you think is kind of the cause and effect there?
Yeah, I mean, so kind of like I said earlier about the driving game, I don't think is people that watch the sport more than just a little bit. If the rebounding numbers are not going to determine the series. The Knicks can rebound a lot, but I almost think there is a statistical sign that the Cavs defense is working well if the other team's offensive production is based on rebounds. Because what that means is those first shots aren't going in, which generally is a sign that teams aren't getting open. Right? It's not like the Cavs team a number of years ago with LeBron and Tristan Thompson, where the Cavs' entire strategy was to take low percentage, high reward shots first. Right? And then you'd have Tristan Thompson, Kevin Love, and LeBron going for rebounds. That was how you won. Right? That's how the Cavs won, is they forced the other team to try to rebound more, and then they got open on these threes. This Cavs team's kind of the opposite, which is they don't give a shit if you rebound the ball a lot. What they want is their defensive sets to be solid. And sometimes that means Mobley especially, but sometimes Allen too, leave the paint as a shooter shooting the ball. I do think so. Like, I think where the Cavs have the advantage is they can lure teams into a comfort zone where they really shouldn't be comfortable. So often, like we saw in the last 2 games against Orlando this year, the Cavs like, great, you guys think you'll rebound the ball more. That means you're going to win. And we're just going to torch you doing everything else. Where I think the Knicks have an advantage is the perimeter. I think the Knicks can shut down the Cavs' offense better than most teams in the NBA. And that means the Cavs are relying on something that is historically unreliable in the playoffs, which is defense. And so I think that's where the Knicks have the advantage. So, like, to me, I think the Cavs are favorites, but I would not bet on this series, period. Even as a Cavs fan, as a Cavs homer, I wouldn't bet on this series. Like, to me, there's too many unknowns.
But to kind of that point, like, do you think it's like the rebounding is because Mobley or Allen have any? So, like, if they could stay in the paint more, do you think they're like Mobley isn't bad at boxing out or anything like that? You wouldn't say that, right?
No, Mobley's good about it. Again, it's just like I don't think that's strategy.
Jordan, thank you so much for your time. Let people know where they can find you. And also, I know you're not going to bet on it, but you got to leave us with your prediction for series outcome.
Yeah, so I'm at Twitter at sports_by_stats. I've been on Pod a bunch. I'm sure I'll be on in the future. I hope you guys let me on in the future.
Depends on how the series goes, pal.
Yeah. I think I guess I got to go Cavs in 7. I'll say Cavs in 7. I think home court advantage, Game 7 in Cleveland. I think Cavs in 7. But
yeah,
hey, who knows?
Can't believe you picked the Cavs. Ridiculous. All right, Jordan, thanks a lot, man. Have a good
Knicks
night.
Knicks and 8.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, and now finally the man of the hour, who everybody's been waiting for. His name is John Schmeelk. He does 5,000 billion different things for WFAN. A lot of Giant stuff, which is why Stacy loves him so much. John, how are you doing?
What's up, guys? Yeah, life with the Giants is busy right now. Getting ready for the draft. For the football fans out there, check out our draft content on Giants.com. But yeah, psyched for the Knicks to get into the playoffs here, man. I mean, to me, better team, better season than they had 2 years ago, and I think it's more real this year. And I think there's a real reason to believe that they can win this series.
So as far as reasons to believe in winning the series, they went out last summer and they made I don't want to say they made a lot of moves, but like they made a very odd sequence of moves to create the space to sign Jalen Brunson. Yes, they could have drafted Jalen Williams, who looks fucking awesome for OKC, but I don't think anybody can really say that move backfired on them. This is why they went and got a guy like him, I think, for a series like this, and just to be in a position to be in a series like this. Do you like? I've seen a lot of. I'm very curious about what you think about this, and just also you, Stacy. But like, I saw a lot of there were people ranking like tiers of players. I think you actually started this, Stacy, and I saw a Cavs guy quote tweet yours, and like he was like Donovan Mitchell is just way better than everybody else in the Knicks. Brunson's got a platform here. This series is big. He put work. He worked Donovan Mitchell last year in the playoffs, And last we saw them on the same floor together, Donovan Mitchell was on fire, but Jalen Brunson was somehow even more on fire. Like, do you think there's a chance here that the Knicks have the best player in the series? Like, I really, I don't know. I sometimes think that to myself. I'm like, am I crazy? Am I just being a homer? But then I
Yeah.
watch it. I'm like, I think there's a chance.
Look, will there be a couple games where I think Brunson outplays Mitchell? Yes, but I think Mitchell's a better player. I think Mitchell, no matter who you put on him, can get a shot whenever he wants. I think if you put size and athleticism on Brunson, I think I think you can do a decent job on him more than you can Mitchell. Now, I don't know if the Cavaliers have that player. I don't know if they have that guy that can do that. So, look, I think Brunson is the second best player in the series, that's for sure. But Mitchell, especially those depth 3-pointers off the dribble, Brunson doesn't take those, and those are almost indefensible. If they're going in, what are you going to do? If Mitchell, goes over a high screen and pulls up from 28 and hits a 3, I mean, you shrug your shoulders. That's why he's Donovan Mitchell. That's why you were willing to trade 4 unprotected first-round picks for the guy, right? So that's what he is. But I think Darius Garland's real good. I think him and Randall are comparable, to be honest with you. We'll see how healthy Randall is. I think that's really important, obviously. But I think where the Knicks have the advantage this series, Schwinn, and I know this is a question you asked, but I'll answer it anyway. I think their role players are better. I think, Grimes and Quickly, I think, are the difference in this series, where you have a lot more faith in them than you have in the Isaac Okoros in the world, and, the Wades coming off the bench, and, guys like that. And I think you feel better about those guys maybe pulling out a win or 2 for the Knicks over the series than you do those support players for the Cavs.
We'll talk about the supporting guys for sure, especially the one who should win Sixth Man of the Year, no matter what the Boston media mafia wants
that
you.
much?
I do. I love him. No matter what the Boston media mafia wants us to believe. But you talked about Randall. How are you feel like the injury is its own thing? All right, but let's say he's physically 100% ready to go. Are you worried at all by some of the stuff you saw from him on the court, forgetting his play, but just some of his behavior, which was, I don't want to say it harkened back to last season. Are you worried about that at all? Or do you just think like it's a long season, shit happens, we shouldn't punish him for that? And are you also like comfortable with Randall and like, the cauldron of a 6 or 7 game playoff series? Or is that something you're just like, we'll see what happens when we get there and judge from there?
I think it's important for Randall to get off to a good start in the series whenever it begins. Because I think if he struggles in the first game, especially early, that can then blossom into something bad. He'll start flashing back to last year. He'll, complain to the officials, and then bad things can happen. That's what I worry about. I think whenever he gets out there, he needs to have one of his big Randall first quarters like he's had during the year. Give himself some confidence, rise. Look, this is not 2 years ago. I'm playing better. The team's better. I have Jalen Brunson here. He's going to help me out a little bit. And I'm going to feel a lot better about myself if I start fast. Now, if he comes out and, he's getting blocked by Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and he's not getting foul calls because the refs don't let him play the first game, he starts complaining, then I worry about it. And it's not necessarily because of what happened at the end of the year. We've just seen this with Randall, right? I don't want to call him a front runner because I don't think that's fair to the guy because he's going to be an all-NBA player again. But I think, he has a way when things start going bad to almost feeding into that frenzy with the way he acts and reacts. And, he cares. And I think it's not that he's a bad guy. I think he just really, really cares. And, some people handle that better than others. And I think Randall sometimes can get into a mode where he lets the negativity build up too much and he has trouble getting himself out of it. He's done better this year, obviously, than he did the last 2, especially last year. But that problem does still come up, which is why I think it's important for him to get off to a fast start.
In kind of on this, in a kind of a similar vein, but we do all remember what happened 2 years ago with the Knicks. You mentioned that the Knicks bench is really good. For me, like as a Knicks fan, there's definitely this feeling of, I don't know if I'm snake bitten or what, right? But I was very confident on that Knicks team. They had similarly, I think they were 3-1 against, they won the season series 3-1 against the Hawks.
Yep.
It was a team with not a lot of playoff experience, but it was a team that had been surging of late. the Cavs have been surging all season. And it did feel like the playoffs were Randall was the kind of forefront of it, but the whole team turned into a pumpkin, right? Reggie Bullock was a 41% 3-point shooter, really struggled. Really, besides Rose, no one really played up to their regular season standards.
Yeah.
It really felt like the whole team turned into a pumpkin. And as good as, and I do think this is a much better team. If you disagree, definitely feel free to say. But do you have that feeling? And if you don't, or what are the things that you think that make this team different?
Well, I don't, because of the guy whose jersey I'm wearing. Look what he did in the playoffs last year, right? I mean, I think he's a guy that's been there. I'm serious. Like he's won.
No, I was laughing. I was laughing at Stacey.
I said Frank Ntilikina.
No, that's right. I didn't hear you. That's very good, actually. Yeah, my daughter and I both got Brunson jerseys when we went to the game this year together. And look, I think that's the guy you rely on when things go bad. He's a leader. He's steady. He did it last year. You can give him the ball, trust him to make the right play. And look, if I'm the Cavs too, what I do against Randall early in the series is that I do what I know flummoxes him. As soon as he puts the ball down or turns his back to the basket, you send a double team at him. And that's what you do, especially when he's on the wing. And I think against the Hawks 2 years ago, the one thing the Knicks didn't do well is adjusting how they got the ball to Randall to handle double teams better. Because I think when he has the ball facing the basket at the top of the key and he sees the double team coming, I think he actually makes pretty good decisions. I think he's a good passer. The problem is when he gets stuck on the wing, especially with his back turned to the basket and the double team comes, that's when you don't know if he's going to make the right decision. So if I'm the Cavs, that's how I try to get him out of his rhythm, get him frustrated because he wants to score. And I think, assuming he's healthy, right, his physicality against Allen and Mobley, even though they're longer than him, I don't think they can handle his power down low. I think that is a significant advantage to Randall. But look, Brunson's the guy I think you have to be confident in, that he's not going to let everyone else turn into a pumpkin. And throw in the fact that I think, look, Quickly's 2 years in, 2 years older than he was then. He's a much better player, more confident. Quentin Grimes is not Reggie Bullock. And I think you just feel better about those guys. And, it's funny with RJ, he's frustrated a lot of people this year, but to me, he's just shot a little worse and played defense a little bit worse, but he's still kind of the same guy he's always been. He just doesn't care. People say, oh, RJ, he deals with adversity, blocks it out. And he just, he's a bad first half, has a good second half. And I kind of laugh. I just think RJ is going to shoot no matter what. If he's missing, he's still going to want to shoot anyway. If he's hitting, he's going to want to shoot anyway. Sometimes they go in, sometimes they don't, and the odds eventually even out to what his shooting percentage is. So if he has a bad first half, he's going to have a good second half. I just don't think RJ cares. Like, he thinks he's a really good offensive player, and he's going to go and shoot whether he had a crappy first half or not. That's just the player that he is, and he was that way at Duke too. So I don't feel like this is going to be everyone turns into a pumpkin because they're an older team. The younger guys are a little bit older, and I think you have Brunson there, who I think is a big-time difference maker.
Yeah, the RJ, we spent way too much time talking about RJ for the last hour and a half. But like,
oh, did you really?
Yeah,
Yikes.
it's just it's been a great conversation. But
It's been a
but like
pleasure.
I to his credit, I actually think that's like in the right doses, that is a good thing. That like if he has a bad shooting half, it doesn't like it's not like he comes out the next half and he's like, oh, like hot potatoing it, right? Like there is value to that. It's just always about
forcing it against packed paints, right? Like a lot of people last game were like, "Oh, he's 0 for 9 from 3 and 11 for 15 from the paint." And I was like, "Do you think those two things are related?" Like, yeah, he had more opportunities in the paint because he's willing to shoot, and like you can't just not like. Do you want him to be Ben Simmons? Like you can't just not take or Andre Roberson or something. Like he has to shoot those.
And to a lesser example, but on the Knicks right now is like Josh Hart does that. Like he'll pass up on open threes and drive into
all
the
the
paint.
time.
And like somehow he makes it work because he just does weird things. But like there are times where you're like, can you just
really
shoot the fuck? Yeah, but you're like, can you just shoot the fucking ball? Like
especially since he's shooting 52% since he got here. Which, by the way, that's what I'm waiting for. I guarantee you, Josh Hart's going to shoot like 15% from three in this series because there's no way he's going to keep this up. And it sucks because he's been so good since he got here. But that's gonna come back down to earth. He is not that good of a shooter.
That's gonna help. That's gonna help Leon.
I always think of
that'll help Leon out this summer.
Hopefully.
I always think of that Mike Woodson gif with the like there was when Pablo Prigioni took a three, like a wide open three, and
he's like,
and Woodson does this, and that's how every Knicks fan felt at the time, because Pablo Prigioni shot like 43% from three, and he had like a good looking shot, but took 2 a game because he just pump fake, and it's like, no, we got to pass the ball. It's like, no, shoot the three.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Have you guys? Let me throw. You guys talk about quickly all the time. Maybe one of you guys have said this before on the pod.
Never.
Oh yeah, hardly ever. Can I throw you as to why Emmanuel quickly took a big step this year? Theory.
Yeah, go for
Because
it.
I have two parts of it. One, and I think one is ironic because the one thing me and you guys, I think everybody really loved about quickly the first year he was here, and we got all excited, is because he made such a living of making difficult shots, especially 3-pointers. 3-pointers on the move, step back, stuff like that. And I think what we kind of learned over the next year, I think that was just small sample size working to his advantage because he kept taking them and they stopped going. They stopped going in. And I think he's figured that out a little bit. And I think he's really cleaned up his shot selection a lot. And I think the other thing that drove me nuts about quickly, especially last year, was that he would get open threes and then he would pump fake them and drive. And I was like, dude, take the shot. And I think he's shooting those now. Very rarely do you see him pump fake an open shot and try to take it. He'll just take the three. So I think his shot selection has really cleaned up. That's one. He's taking the easier shots, and I think he's making more of them. That's why his shooting numbers are back where they more reflect the type of shooter that he is.
Creating easier shots for himself, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the second part, right?
Yeah.
And, the first part I was talking about is the stuff off other guys. Offensive rebound, kickouts, stuff like that. Swing passes off drives, whatever. The other part is what you just said, is creating all his own shots better. And I think he was on his way to doing it anyway, but I think the arrival of Brunson helped him a lot. He's a lot more patient, I feel like, in his drives. He knows how to use little pivots to create more room. He does a little bit better of creating contact now. He's not always just trying to create contact from behind and force up those kind of bad shots. He's going forward into guys a little bit better. And I think he's learned from Brunson on how to operate in the lane a little bit with change of pace, stutters, pumps, pivots to create. He still takes floaters, but I think they're higher quality floaters. When's the last time you saw quickly take a 14-foot floater? A little push shot like he did a year ago or 2 years ago. He doesn't take him anymore. So I think offensively, those are the two things that he's really done to really take that step where he is right up there for 6th man of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing with him is, like you just mentioned, the floaters. It's like he turned something that it was, first of all, for him to have the floater he did coming in the league, it was a weapon, right? But if you lean on something so much, it can become a crutch. And I think what happened is so what I think is, after his rookie season, I think he and the organization, whoever, okay, we want you to get better at XYZ things, right? And so some of that's like off the dribble shooting, or decision making, point guard stuff, driving into the paint. He's talked about that, right? That's something he had to consciously look to get better at, improve on. And I thought at the start of last season, it was like, it's, Pat, I think, is it Pat Riley that talked about this, the disease of more? And I know, like, the Knicks didn't win a championship, but it's like, you come back after a really nice rookie season, right? And the organization's like, okay, we want you to work on all these things. And you come back and you're like so excited to show off all these new things. And Tibbs is like, okay, so you're still playing off the bench next to Derrick Rose. That's your role for now. And that's what it is. And so it's like, he has all these new things that he wants to, like, do, but in the role that he's still playing, it's kind of hard to balance that. And so I think that was really screwing up some of his decision making. And I think you saw that at the start of this year too, where, like, he was still kind of like, there were stretches where Derrick Rose the first guy off the bench, and quickly's only getting 18 minutes in a game, and it's like, 1 10-minute stint in the first half and then a 6-minute stint in the second half. There are these weird, and so, and Tibbs even talked about this too, is right, where it's like, he's getting more minutes now consistently. So I think there's an inherent, like, confidence in, okay, even if I fuck up 2 or 3 plays in a row, I'm not going to be coming out of the game right now. And then on top of that, when they made the rotation change that they did on December 4th, like, that effectively moved quickly into, you're leading that unit. When Brunson's on the floor, you're the guy. You're the ball handler anyway. And, like, I think that kind of has not cleaned up, but it's helped just streamline, like, exactly what he's supposed to be doing. And on top, and, like, it just speaks to him that even even with like that rotation, obviously we've seen him have to play multiple different roles, right? Starting for Brunson, starting for Grimes, starting for RJ, and then going back to playing a bench role. Like his versatility now is even more than it was to when he came into the league, and it just enhances his effectiveness as a player. It just makes him so valuable, and like it helps connect different lineups and pieces that it unlocks things in the roster that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I just think he's been phenomenal this year, and I think you can make an argument for just like after Brunson and after Randall. I mean, I personally think he's clearly been the most valuable guy for those two. And I think there's like, if you just look at like, advanced stats, impact numbers and stuff, it's probably an argument for him being the best or second best guy on the team. So whatever you subscribe to, like he's clearly been a difference maker for them and really invaluable, especially in a season where like, again, we're not going to go down this path here. But like, with RJ Barrett going through whatever he's going through, to have a guy like quickly step up and a guy like Quentin Grimes, and you go out and acquire Josh Hart, having those guys really makes a big difference.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, and again, you're going to go game by game based on how the game flow is going. So I'm not going to make this like a universal, drop dead statement, but I'm not closing games with RJ in this series. I'm just not. I mean, it's got to be, pick your center, whichever guy's playing better. Obviously, Randall and Brunson if Randall's healthy, and then whichever 2 out of the 3. And I think quickly has to be on the floor, and then it's either Hart or Grimes, right? I think, if the Hart's shooting well, have him out there, because I like his length on Donovan Mitchell, I think. And I think Grimes does a fine job too, but I think Hart on Mitchell's probably maybe a little bit better down the stretch of these games. But, I think you can kind of feel that out as the series goes along too. And I think that's your closing lineup. Now, obviously things change based on how individual games go, but game one, before you have any information and assuming everyone's playing like they normally do, I'm not closing with RJ. I just don't think he gives you enough defensively and as a catch and shoot guy where he's helping you at the end of these games as much as a guy like Hart, Grimes, or Quickly will.
Yeah, and to add on quickly, I will say I think the whole convo about more minutes versus do people just shoot better and play better is an interesting convo. I don't think you can say that Obi Toppin has shot better just because he's playing against lesser competition of late. But he does seem to play better when he's not worried about the quick hook. I think he's that's an interesting thing. I think anecdotally, when Deuce has not been worried about the quick hook, or I think that he's even shot better. So I think that's an interesting question. Which
are we sure Deuce has ever had the option to not be worried about the quick hook?
Well, when Brunson is out, he gets a literal quick hook, but he gets a little more leeway, right? And when he's playing well in defense, when the rotation is short, I feel like those are when his best performances have come, not just in terms of counting stats. I think that is a question that I think that like deeper analyses haven't really been able to answer properly, because by definition it's a small sample size, right? Like you can't like if you're just saying do people who get 10 minutes a game improve when they get 15 or 20, like you're just not going to get a lot of shots there. So I think that's an interesting question in itself, and I from watching these Knicks, I do feel like it helps, but the cause maybe those guys start shooting in better in practice, and that's why they get more minutes, right? It's always tough to parse that out. What I will say quickly is like there's something to be said about just having a bigger bag. Like that's been like I think he's a good passer. I don't think he's taken amazing strides as a passer. Like he's better at making reads the way you would expect a third-year player to make reads compared to a rookie, but he's not turned into some amazing passer.
And he's also, by the way, just to interrupt you real quick, he hasn't turned into this amazing pull-up mid-range shooter either, which is usually the step that guys take to become really good offensively. He doesn't have that, kind of quick release off the bounce mid-range game that like Brunson has. So I'm with you.
Yeah, but he has that at all now. He did not have that at all as a rookie, or even like last year he took a few mid-range shots.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to your point, yes, he hasn't made that leap, but like there are so many ways he can attack you. He has the floater now, but he can hit the lob. He can hit the cross-court pass. I will say in terms of passing, one thing, he used to have to jump up and throw over his head to go cross-court. Now he can throw that with one hand. His handle has really improved. That's probably the biggest improvement he's made.
Yeah, he can navigate to the basket a lot better with his handle, no question.
Yeah, like he nashes a lot, right? Where he'll go around
Mhm.
under the hoop and kind of circle the paint. So that and like he had to pick up his dribble a lot more when he was younger. So he's got the floater. He has added a mid-range shot, which he likes, especially after he nashes, right? When the defense just gets tired of chasing him. Like that's like the best pull up. That's like the best move in like 21 or you're playing pickup. It's like just run around, especially if you're a small guy like me. You run around till they get tired and you get an open shot, right? But it works, right? So I think, I think that he has way more of a bag, and that's opened up a lot of the other things that you see. He has a pretty interesting finishing package. He knows that he's not gonna dunk on anyone, so he can go off. Like I've seen him finish with both hands from either side of the hoop. He can go reverse. He obviously is still really good at finishing through contact and seeking contact. He's improved his strength. I think that it's a very good case study in like when you give yourself more options, you can use more options, and you make it harder for defenses. And I think that that's probably, again, not to keep harping on RJ, but that is something that's held him back. And that's why like I do harp on the 3 to 10 foot improvement, because some progress is necessary. Like ultimately you cannot just be a guy who relies on only attacking the rim and you don't have a plan B. No matter how good of a, like we saw that Ben Pistons. Maybe that should be what we call him. That's a good nickname to Schwinn, I think. Ben Simmons is a very good passer. Like elite passer. He's a great passer. Like I don't think RJ will ever be that good. Like 99% of NBA players won't be that good a player passer. And he's 6'10" and he's an athletic freak, and it still wasn't enough. So you need more of a bag, and I think that's helped quickly more than anything else. It's just developing the mid-range, developing the handle, developing different ways to get to the floater, developing some fakes, more moves around the basket. And
He's
strength,
also stronger.
Right?
Yeah, he's
much
stronger.
Yeah.
And
which has also helped him on defense a lot.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And I would say this actually too is like I actually think his bag, like if you're talking about what more can he improve at, I agree with you. I think I do think the mid-range shot creation has improved, but like there's definitely more there. Like he can like I've talked about this with Stacey before, where when he takes mid-range shots, a lot of them are he drives, and then he does a spin back and turn around fade, right? You very, very rarely see him take a guy off the bounce and just pull up in the mid-range. So that's like something I think very specifically he can improve on.
Yeah, and I think the two things that he struggles with, he still has a fairly slow release, I think, and he's a low release. So I think those are the two things that are kind of working against that mid-range pull-up game a little bit.
Yeah, so and I think you've seen him, like when he does take that fade now, it is a higher release, I think, in the mid-range. So I do think it's like a thing that he's cognizant of and probably has to work on more. So that's one. And then the other one is like offhand ball handling. Like it's improved a lot. Just everything he can do with his left hand. It's still not like at some elite level. It's good. I think he can get better. And then just honestly, just decision making. Like I think there are actually times where he plays with this like kind of like manic energy a little bit. And I think there are times where he's like figuring out what he wants to do, and then it's like by the time you realize that he's been dribbling for like 10 seconds, and he's like, do I want to take this guy with the dribble? Do I want to take a step back three? Do I want to like, take a floater? Like he's like got so much stuff going on in his head, and because he has improved his skills, he's got so many more options that I think that stuff can get cleaned up. But like, I mean, these are all things that are very normal. I mean, it's like he's 23. Decision making, like you expect that to be a work in progress and to improve. Like the mid range shooting, considering where he was when he came into the league, it's not surprising.
He didn't have a mid range jumper,
right? Right, exactly. It's not surprising that that's still something he needs to work on. Like ball handling, we just talked about like his ball handling's improved a lot. It's just you're like, can you take another incremental step? I think he can. We'll see. But like look, we've talked a bunch about quickly, and I look, to me, he's sixth man of the year. I really don't like. I get Brogdon's had a really good year. He's been a really good scorer. He's a really good player for the Celtics. He might be the difference between them, why they didn't win the championship last year versus why they maybe end up winning it this year. Not because he's carrying them, but because that margin is so thin and he might be able to bridge it for them. But like quickly, to me, has just been a more impactful player. I think he's played a larger variety of roles because his team has needed him to. I think he's come up with big time performances that simply outweigh anything Brogdon has done. Like, I'm sorry, like you dropped 38 in a double overtime win in Boston without Jalen Brunson. That counts a lot. And I just got this argument that's now like, well, he did a lot of his work when he was a starter, is the dumbest fucking argument I've heard ever, and that's just complete horseshit. All right. Anyway, he's not the only guy who has improved this year. We talked about Julius Randle also, who is taking a big bounce back. Quentin Grimes, he's a guy. I think John, you were really high on him last summer, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, not only has he gotten better, like not only did him kind of starting in the lineup help be part of why the season turned around, but this last 10-game run to close the season, kind of seen. I compared it to what we saw last year at the end of the season from Quickly, where you're like, wait, are you? Is there way more here? Like,
No, dude, he looks like he looks in summer league, except he's playing against real NBA players.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is, right? He's getting the ball, and the thing I love about Grimes, why I was so high on him, the jumper off the dribble and off the catch is very smooth. In fact, sometimes he goes too fast when he's wide open, but he's able to catch the ball, get it up, and release it so quickly. It makes it very tough to defend. Same thing off the dribble. He could get that dribble up, take a shot very, very quickly, and it comes very smoothly. And the fact that he does it so fast makes defenders react quickly, and then he can give that pump, do the drive, and he's very aware when he gets to the hoop to dish to an open teammate. And now he's been finishing strong to the basket over the past 3-4 weeks, dunks, offhand finishes, whatever you want to talk about. And he's even taking guys off the dribble now. Like, he's legitimately quick off the dribble. Remember, he was a point guard in high school. So he has all this in his bag, and it's starting to all come out. Throwing the fact he's a good defensive player. He's not a selfish player. It's hard to find the real weakness in his game at this point. I think he needs to find a little bit more confidence in his handle. I think sometimes he can. If defenders really pressure him, they make him pick up his dribble a little bit. I think he needs to work on that. But he's just showing a lot of confidence in his jump shot. He could do it off the dribble. He could do it on the catch and shoot. He could do it on the move on the catch and shoot. And I think he checks every box in that way. And look, unless something happens to him, he's going to be an NBA starter for 10 years. Like, he's going to be JJ Redick, except he has better tools than Redick does. Like, he's going to defend, he can shoot off the dribble, and he's a better athlete, and he's a better passer. So he can do all those things. And, eventually a team's going to come knocking in a star trade. They're going to want Quentin Grimes. They're going to want Emmanuel quickly, and then Knicks going to have some tough decisions to make. But I think, Grimes has been wonderful. And what I love in terms of the matchup of the series, which has me fascinated here, guys, is that the Knicks have 4 guys they could put on Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland with confidence, right? You could put Hart on him. You could put Quickly on him. You could put Grimes on him, and then you could put Deuce McBride on him if you need to bring another guy off the bench. And I think you feel good about all 4 of those guys guarding either of those 2 players. And I think, I'm not saying it's a Knicks advantage. They're great players, but I think all 4 of those guys can cover both of those players, and you're not going to get killed. They're going to make them work for points. And if you can always have a tough, fresh defender on those 2 players for most of the series, I think it really helps the Knicks mitigate whatever offensive advantages the Cavs have with those 2 perimeter guards.
I'm curious to see if Deuce gets minutes, because I agree with you. Like, I think he's been really good when we played the Cavs and he's gotten minutes in those games. He's a bad matchup, especially for Garland, I think. But I think to your point, like, what you're never going to stop a great player, right?
No.
All you can do is slow them down and try and wear them out. And that last Cavs game, like, I mean, Mitchell and Garland, we talked about this just earlier in the pod, but like, they both were red hot to start the game. I mean, Mitchell, that's as sharp as I've seen him start a game all season. And Garland was also cooking. And then you watch them in the third quarter, you watch them in the fourth quarter, and it's like, they're not getting as much separation. They're not able to, hit the step back with as much frequency.
Shots are short, right?
Right. And it's like, and man, I got to say, like, you talked about all, like, 4 guys, but I just think, like, I agree with you. They have 4 guys, but there is something about Josh Hart. That guy takes so much out of you when he's locked in defensively. I mean,
no, Hart's my number 1 matchup for Mitchell late in games. That's why I think he has to be on the floor to close games out. I think he's the guy you put on Mitchell late.
Can we do a rewind? Do you guys remember who the best defender against Trae Young was the last time the Knicks made the playoffs?
Wasn't it Quickly?
Well, no, because he didn't get to play that much. It was Randall. Like Randall was the best.
Right.
We haven't even mentioned him. That's now injury, of course, and I don't think, to your point, if you have all of these great perimeter defenders, I don't think the idea is let's switch Randall on this guy, especially if that results in one of them guarding Mobley. But that's even something in your back pocket, right? He's pretty good at switching onto perimeter defenders.
Yeah, and by the way, that I think is one of the underrated reasons why Randall defensively got better this year is that Thibodeau stopped asking him to play drop coverage. He let him switch more, and I think Randall's athletic enough to do that. So yeah, 100%, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, and I will say, like, one thing that's going to be key. We talked about this quickly, right? The mid range stuff. The Cavs, I think, are allowing the fewest threes per game, both in volume wise. So you're not going to get a lot of clean looks from three against them. We know that they have Mobley and Allen. So,
well, which, by the way, it makes sense, right? You got those two monsters inside. You funnel people off the 3-point line into your bigs. It's simple, right?
Yeah, and like you said, like those guys are going to be waiting inside for you. So even though you can hurt them on the offensive glass, you're not shooting a high percentage in the paint or at the rim specifically. This is again like.
And that's why, by the way, offensive rebound kickouts for three, that's when you're getting your threes on the offensive rebounds and the kickouts.
Absolutely. And I think, like, going back to what I mentioned earlier, like, this is when you need Brunson to be Brunson. Because, like, it's going to be a series where I think both teams are depending on their best guys to carry it home to some extent. Because
and that's, by the way, that's the difference too. We talk about 4 good defensive matchups for Mitchell. Well, who are the multiple good defensive matchups the Cavs have for Brunson?
Right, it's just Okoro.
Right, that's it. And that guy is a huge minus offensively.
Yeah, and even Mobley, they tried switching him, and I think to Mobley's credit, I think he did a good job staying with Jalen Brunson, and some of those finishes were just absurd. I think he had a Dirk fadeaway on Mobley. He had one where Mobley had him dead to rights at the hoop, and Brunson hesitated for half a second. I do wonder if that's the Cavs' best option against him. That's not Okoro, but it's a matchup in theory. I could see going the Cavs' way, but Brunson is so talk about a bag. He has everything, even against a generational defender. It's like he's a cheat code. That's how it feels, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And he has that step back too. He has that mid-range step back, which against a big that's going to be afraid he's going to blow by him. That mid-range step back against the big is going to be key for him.
And I mean, I just think, again, like your point, I think Okoro did slow him down in that game. The second game,
he's a good defender.
Yeah, he definitely had an impact on him. But great offensive players, they'll figure it out after enough time. And I feel like if all you've got is Okoro to throw at him, at some point in the series, I think Brunson's going to figure it out. And
what happens if Brunson gets him in foul trouble? Right. Then what the hell do they do?
Yeah, and it's like you said, Stacey,
and they're already losing something on offense, right? Because the Knicks live with Okoro taking open threes.
And as you mentioned, they can put Mobley on him, but now you're gonna have Allen on who, Randall or Mitch, and then if you don't have him on Mitch is gonna get 17 offensive rebounds in a half. It's gonna be ridiculous. So, it's a big series for Brunson. I don't know if he's better than Donovan Mitchell, but I do think he has a chance to be better than Donovan Mitchell in this series. And
is the only thing that separates them volume 3-point shooting? Just the volume. That's it, really. Right?
Are you talking statistically or traits wise?
Just in terms of value, Mitchell is a much better athlete, but at the rim, they both finish really well. Brunson, they're both elite scorers. I'm not knocking Mitchell, but I think the big difference, if you look at it, especially statistically, but even when you watch the games, is that Mitchell is taking 8 threes or 9 threes a game, and a lot of them are, to your point, those 28-foot pull-ups, where Brunson is starting to do that more, which has been a game changer, but he's not doing it at the level of Mitchell. Mitchell is, it's fair to compare him to Dame at that point in that part of the game. That's the level he's doing at, where Brunson isn't quite there. But to me, besides that, I don't know that, where is the difference?
Well, I think Brunson's I think he's a way better. If you're talking about 3-level scorer, he is way better in that second level. He might be, he's one of the top 5 guys in the league in that second level.
He's a comparable Chris Paul,
Chris Paul. 100%.
Yeah, he might be the best for all I know. It's him, Kawhi, KD. Those are the guys you're talking about. He's in that class of mid-range scorer. Yeah,
sorry to praise
DeRozan already stunk it up a game ago. He's getting into playoff road right now. Well,
And
I'm
by
sure
the
we'll get.
way, and I think good question. Larry Israel just asked about who's gonna, who are Garland and Mitchell gonna guard if Okoro's on Brunson. Well, they're gonna throw one of them on Grimes and one of them on Barrett, or then if Hart's in the game, one on Hart, and they're gonna say, all right, if RJ Barrett beats us in the series, okay, we'll live with that. That's why RJ. There's a lot of pressure gonna be on him because he's gonna have matchups that he should be able to win. But here's the problem. RJ's going to get to the basket, and do you guys have confidence in finishing over Jared Allen and Evan Mobley?
Well, I think it's more
with his slow motion layups. I don't think so.
Can he find Mitch or can he kick out? That's more. I don't like if he
So you're
tries
going
to
trust
finish
his decision making on his passes.
That's the bigger question to me. Then I don't think. I think the answer to your first question was definitely no. I'm a little more bullish on the second question. But yeah.
No, but you're right. I think that's your best shot, and maybe that's how they get some open threes also.
And isn't that? I mean, ultimately, like, yeah, it is a big series. I think this is like, we haven't even talked about him at all. I think this is a huge series. The three guys to me on the Knicks, it's like huge series for these guys, right? Barrett, Randall, and Tom Thibodeau. Like, whatever.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
If the Knicks lose this series in 6 or 7 games, that's not going to be like a crisis, right? At least not for me. But if they lose this series on the margins because Tibbs did not lean into the flexibility and versatility of the pieces he has and sticks with a guy like Barrett too long, or doesn't play, he plays Hart and Barrett together to close the game, he can't make a fucking shot. Like, there are just things he might choose to do that could backfire on him. But like, he has to take chances, and he has pieces now to really throw different looks at them. So like, to me, this is a massive series for him, because the last time we played Atlanta, we could sit here all day and talk about, well, they should have, started switching screens earlier in the series, and you had to do a better job of scheming ways to hunt Trae Young and all this stuff. You could reasonably argue at that point in time, they just didn't have the horses. Mitch was out too. It's like, you just didn't have the talent. This team has plenty of talent. They have the talent to make this an uncomfortable series against Cleveland. And if Randall is healthy, they have the talent to win the series.
Agreed. Here's the one for you. Would you guys consider at some point playing hard at the 4, thinking physically he won't let Mobley dominate him down low, and you can get out in transition a little bit more because Hart's so much faster than Mobley is?
Yes.
I would do that more against. I would do that less against Mobley and more when they have Lamar Stevens at the 4.
No, that's fair.
Backup. I'm not sure I trust Hart on Mobley. Oh, that would be interesting. And to what extent does that wear down Mobley? I mean, to what Schwinn was saying, like, I don't think anyone, you could be 7 feet tall or 5'10". I don't think anyone likes playing against Josh Hart. You throw him at him, kind of like what, I think Mobley's a different player than Kristaps Porzingis. But yeah, that's kind of what the Celtics used to do with Marcus Smart to Porzingis, right? You use his lower leverage and all of that.
Just take his legs.
That would be, I think, an interesting thing to try if they're really struggling. I think they would more likely try it with Stevens. Jeff Rasmussen mentioned this before. Before Obi kind of went off, there was kind of a thought that, like, in the playoffs, do you shorten the rotation even more? Do you go to 8, and does that mean Hart at the 4, or RJ at the 4? I think Obi's play has been really encouraging there, but if they lose a game or two, I don't think, like, Tibbs benched Elfrid Payton, who was a season-long starter. He's been willing to make those kind of changes. I think it's very interesting. I think specifically when it comes to running the floor, I think Obi's really good at that anyway. So I think it would be more about, the Cavs are a weak rebounding team. So you put in an elite rebounder there in Hart. You put in a guy that can body guys, a great help defender, who can space the floor at least as well as Obi, probably a little bit better. I think that it's definitely worth going to, particularly if there's tough sledding or if it's, if you feel like you have a play there.
Yeah, look, and I'll say this too. I think, I'm not the biggest Obi fan compared to other Knicks fans. I think he's a good NBA player, but I don't think he's like the star that's being, hidden away. But I think in a series like this, he's very important because, you guys talked about how good the Cavs defense is, and they're a very good defensive team. But what Obi's great at is getting what I like to call kind of garbage points, where you don't have to run plays for him. It's not in the half court. He'll leak out, get transition buckets. He'll, hit an open 3, and he'll have a chance to stretch the floor against 2 bigs that don't want to leave the paint. and he'll get a chance to run out against two bigs that don't want to run the floor as much as he does. So I think for the minutes he does play, and if Randall has to miss the first couple games or whatever it is, I think he has an opportunity against this team to do the two things he's really good at, is hit open, catch and shoot threes, get in the open floor and run. And I think that in this matchup is particularly helpful given the strengths of the Cavs defense with those two big guys in their front court.
I wanted to go back, you mentioned with Hart and just kind of playing small. This is again where I think it's an interesting thing for Tibbs, and Randall getting hurt sucks. Okay. There's no doubt about that. If Randall comes back and he's just not looking explosive and he's not moving well, he's not like, this is where it gets really interesting for Tibbs, because
very difficult for him too.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and I think he's in a very tough situation there. But like, we saw this in that last game against Cleveland, and I know they didn't have Jared Allen, so it's a different thing. But like, the mobility defensively that you got when you put Quick and you put Grimes and you put Hart out there behind Brunson, so protecting Brunson, and then you have Hartenstein or Mitch, whichever one, like you said, is playing better in that given game. Like, that lineup to me just feels like it can present a lot of issues while maintaining a ton of defensive integrity. I know that you're giving up size, so you might get hurt on the offensive glass, but like, just the speed and the tenacity you get from those three, like those four guys really, other side from Brunson on the defensive end. And to be honest, like, Brunson isn't like, he's not a good defender, but it's not for a lack of want or a lack of unwillingness to mix it up. If any, I mean, he mixes it up. He gets in there, he gets dirty.
Sometimes he can just get dominated physically with athleticism. It happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's like not great around getting around screens, but like he'll take a hit. I mean, what does he lead the league in charges or something? Like, the guy is definitely willing to compete. So I just think that lineup and the various combinations, like, it's just something there to think about. And like, if Randall isn't feeling right, does Tibbs have the fucking balls and like I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, it's some easy decision, he should just fucking do it. But like, does he pull the trigger on a move like that? I don't know. I'm very curious to see.
That will have implications beyond just the series, right? I mean, Randall is obviously a cornerstone of the team at the moment. So, and to what we were talking about earlier, maybe not the guy who's going to take that in the best spirits. So it's going to be more about winning the series, like it or not. It's like the decision to bench Randall potentially would be about more than just winning the series.
I think you have to be. I think before he does something drastic like that, I think you're down 2 games, and he says, "All right, we're either going down 3-0 or whatever, and we're finished, or we make a move." And I think that's when we saw them finally, make some drastic moves against the Hawks 2 years ago, when things finally started to look like, oh yeah, we're really in big trouble now. I think that's when it happens. I don't think that happens early in the series, unless it's health related. Look, I think that's the difference, right? If Randall looks healthy, but he's just playing poorly, I think it gets very hard. If he looks hurt and you can tell he's not right, then you at least can be, oh no, Julius, we still love you. You're great. And it's not that you're just not healthy enough, and we'll sit you out another game. I think why they're making the move does matter in this case. For Randall to handle it mentally and emotionally, and frankly, for the franchise to manage it, because the franchise, to your point, Stacey, benching a franchise player in a playoff series,
an all-star this year,
and going to be an all-NBA player, that sends a message, and I think it's a tough one for a team to kind of move past and move forward with. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that would be a very tough decision. Hopefully, it won't come to that.
Going back to Grimes, actually, when you were talking about him, there was a player that came to mind. So you mentioned, I think you mentioned Redick, but like with better defense. I think Bane is another guy people have compared Grimes to a lot. There is a player who had length, was a pretty like a very good defensive prospect. He had played point guard in college. Grimes played point guard as a freshman. Ended up moving off ball, but this was a player who played point guard, came to the Knicks, and clearly wasn't a good on-ball option. He was a player I was high on.
Cameron.
So I gotta no
Alonzo Trier.
I gotta ask, John Schmeelk, is
Scott Novak.
It's Quentin Grimes. Wow, it's Steve. Come on, man.
That's Steve Novak.
Not-
Sorry, geez.
Oh,
God,
wow.
Christ.
It's Quentin Grimes, the Iman Shumpert that was promised.
No.
He's a way better shooter.
Shumpert can never shoot. That's the problem with Shumpert.
But like that was kind of, I think he was a guy that a lot of Knicks fans were high on.
Yeah.
I think Shumpert's defense was always overrated.
Yeah, Grimes is already better, but like
He couldn't. That guy died on screens.
Shumpert looked like
every
he tried hard on defense, and he stripped the ball a few times, so people got really excited.
I think he's what we wanted Shumpert to be, though. Like he was first round pick, all these things. It seemed like that's who I was like. That was, and I think the injury did hurt, and I think I'm a little higher on his defense.
What was Shumpert? Was Shumpert the 21st pick?
17th.
17th?
Was he 17, huh? I thought
that's right, because Kawhi was 2 picks away, and I was really mad about
it. And Klay Thompson went 11, and that's who Walsh and D'Antoni really wanted. And well,
Donnie Walsh not trading up for somebody he wanted in the draft. Amazing.
Who ended up on the Warriors. But anyway, we don't have to we do have to relieve that. We don't have to relive that. I guess the point I'm making is, one, I do think like that's kind of what we've been looking for a long time, is like an on-ball guy who can shoot like that and make plays on the ball.
And by the way, Stacey, sorry for interrupting. Every NBA team wants that guy.
Yeah.
A great on-ball defender that can shoot. I mean, every single NBA team would take Quentin Grimes and play him 25 minutes a game.
Every team's rotation.
Every team.
Yeah.
And I think also it's like, I think me and Schwinn have complained a lot, and a lot of people have complained, like, where is the 6'7", 6'8"? This is why people wanted Cam Reddish to have a role, is because, and like this is why everyone I didn't hate the move last summer to trade the pick. I think getting 3 firsts is good. But yeah, there were a lot of 6'8" wings. It's why I kind of want them to keep this pick, like that prototypical. But I also feel like they've kind of found this inefficiency almost, that like, we think of all 3-and-D guys as being 6'6", 6'7", 4-position switchers who can shoot threes. And they're like, well, what if Grimes is 6'4", 6'5", but he's strong enough to play up? What if Quickly is 6'3", but because of his wingspan and off-ball defense? So I think to your point, they've kind of replicated that value that those guys add, by finding opportunity. And like, because these guys are a little bit shorter, that's where you find the value. That was the pitch I gave my fiance too.
Hey, look.
But I also want to ask you this, and I'll just, how realistic is a comparison to Bane at this point? Like that's a guy who I think delivers close to all-star level value, and Grimes, like if you look at comparative stats at the same age, like it's not I don't think it's crazy, but maybe it's crazy. I don't know.
No, I don't think the overall output is crazy. I think I think they do it in different ways, right? Bane's obviously a lot thicker, a lot bigger. I think, he's not as quick and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're that dissimilar per se. And I think what you're talking about here is that the Knicks have built out a really good team, and they're just missing the 1A superstar. I think they have two B-level stars in Randall and Brunson, who are, between the 12th and 22nd, 20th best players, 12th and 25th best players in the league, however you want to look at it. But, it's a league of stars. If you don't have a top 5 guy, you better have 2 top 15 guys or 2 top 12 guys, whatever, right? So I think they've really built out a roster that's good. And now they just have to, from talking a bigger picture look now, right, is they have to take all their draft pieces. I think RJ, probably OB. And if you could package those guys into that star that I think is probably a little bit better offensively than Brunson and Randall, because as much as I love those guys, I still don't think they are, Brunson's close, but I think if you put size and athleticism on, I think his ISOs into the game become very tough for him to score just because of his physical stature with his traits. I think you need a guy that's just a little bit better offensively than those 2 guys down the stretch of games. But if you can figure out a way to hold on to Quickly and Grimes and Mitch and Hartenstein and, Brunson and Randall, and you put like a real deal star next to those 2, preferably a big wing, I think you're cooking and you're contending. And, we talked before the year figuring out a way to make 2 moves to become a contending team. Well, the great news about this year is now you only got to make 1 move. It's just got to be the right one. And you have to, don't do what Danny Ainge did and pass on the trade you need for a trade you didn't and go get Kyrie Irving instead of Jimmy Butler, however you want to look at it. Go and get the right guy. And that's now what the challenge is for Leon Rose is being the right level of patience, not the Danny Ainge level of patience, and making the right trade for the right guy that can put this team over the top. And I think that's kind of where we sit, whenever the offseason shows up, hopefully in a month rather than 2 weeks, that's kind of where you're at. And I think it's a damn good place to be. It's the best place the Knicks have been in since they played the San Antonio Spurs in the finals, or, lost to the Raptors 2 years later in the first round when they had Rice, Sprewell, and Houston. So I think, it's a damn good place to be. And I think Knicks fans should be pretty happy about it, especially since I was fighting with people in October about whether or not they should fire Leon Rose, which I always thought was asinine, but some fans wanted to do it. And he could be the executive of the year. So,
well, I let me just guess that he won't be executive of the year, but
no, probably not. But I think he should be in the mix.
Yeah, he
I
should
mean,
definitely be in the mix.
we talked about this in strict court. I forgot about Kevin Huerter, but it'll probably be Monte McNair. I think that seems to be consensus. Like, he added Brunson, Hart, and Hartenstein for pieces, right?
Yeah.
Reddish and a pick. Like, I'm not even going to say he traded a first for Brunson. I think that's an idiotic thing that people say because we had 3 protected firsts. And with the way that, those picks are going to be late first round. You know who's late first round picks under this front office was Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly, right? So I think we're all in agreement there. I do want to ask this, on the star thing, or like you mentioned you want someone who's a better scorer ideally. Who is the worst player that would be conceivably available that you think makes that, puts them over the edge?
So basically, who's the worst best player on a title team?
No, yeah, I know. And I think the borderline guy that I always think about, and Knicks fans get mad at me, and that's fine. And I probably are higher on him than other people are. I like Zach LaVine.
So gross.
Like Zach LaVine. He is if he's with his athletic profile, he is an unstoppable offensive player at the end of games. He can pass, he can shoot, he can drive, he can go off the dribble. Now, you want to yell about his defense? That's fine. It's a cluster. I get it. No argument. You don't like that, and his knee is worrisome. Agreed. But as an offensive player, you give him the ball to make plays at the end of games. Tell me how you stop that guy with his athletic profile and his ability to shoot off the dribble. It's very, very difficult. So you asked for the worst guy. I want better than that, but you want the worst guy? That's the worst guy. And I'm not sure. And, he might not put you over the top. And that's fair. That's fair. But I think that's the guy I think about.
I just can't like, first of all, I just will never care for Zach LaVine. And you want to see a bad decision maker down the stretch of a game. This guy makes, Randall look like fucking Aristotle or something.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that.
He's a terrible end of game decision maker. Awful. His turnover rate for a guy of his ball handling ability is just not good. I know they don't have a good point guard. That's part of the problem. I'm sorry. At some point, if your high watermark as a player is just getting to the first round and that's what it is, and we're in the play-in game and we're celebrating the stuff. I don't know. I just Zach LaVine to me is not it. I just don't trust him. I think he's really weak defensively. And I got to say, you talk about a guy who's done an incredible job, at least defensively as a coach. Billy Donovan, they're top 10 in defense this year. And I have no idea how, because they're starting LaVine, they're starting DeRozan.
Are they really almost top 10 in defense? I didn't realize that.
And
that's how he won 2 national titles with pretty no-name guards. He won a national title with Bradley. No, he didn't.
With Corey Brewer.
Bradley Beal. He didn't win with Bradley Beal.
But to me, I think the threshold needs to be higher because pushing the needle from where the Knicks were last year to where they are now is an easier task than bridging the gap from where they are now, which is to me, I think they're more of a 52-win team than a 47-win team. Just I think
that's how they've been playing since.
Yeah, right. So
they've
the
been
record
like that since they changed the rotation.
Right. The record
is probably even better, right?
Right. So the record since the rotation change is more relevant to me than the overall season.
I would still say they're probably more like a 4 seed than a 3 or a 2 seed, though. To be honest,
yeah.
And
but I guess
exceptionally strong. They would probably be a 3 seed in the West. They're
And in-
Sacramento's level as a
No,
team.
I agree
and-
with that.
And in the East, that's like a 52-win team, so it's there. It's right there. But like, I think the gap you have to get to from there to championship contender, that's like probably what, like 7-8 regular season wins. That's like 60 wins you want to be around to be a real contender. Like, I don't think Zach LaVine's moving the needle from 52 to 60. Like, that's the guy you need to really look for.
I think that's fair. I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
And I think, like, Larry Israel said Paul George, there's injury concerns with him. He's older. But if you're just talking about in a vacuum, the level of player, like, I think that's probably where you're at. Where it's
Butler's
like
the other one that.
yeah. Well, I think Butler's better than George. So that's different for me. But Butler
Oh, you
also
do not
presents
Very good.
But Butler also presents like weird
Contract.
roster team building things too, where
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
look, Butler's not a guy that and look, I'm with you on Butler. I love his defensive wing capabilities and all that stuff, but I trust Brunson with the ball late in games to score more than I do Paul George. And I do. I think he's a better offensive player than Paul George. Now, I think
I
Jimmy
agree.
Butler is inconsistent night in, night out, but when Jimmy Butler's on, Jimmy Butler's awesome. But I'm of the idea where I don't think this team, I think they have a long window. As much as any team is a long window. So I'm going to be very hesitant trading for guys that are over 30 years old.
Yeah, and I think
let
this
me
is
add
where they
one.
need to be
There's
careful.
There's one player no one mentioned that might be available and is younger. If you somehow got a trade around RJ and Obi, you keep Grimes, you keep Quickly, you trade 3. If you have to trade, I don't think you have to trade 3 picks. I mean, if you replace those 2 guys with Jaylen Brown on this team, like, if you like this team, I don't know how you don't think that's like a title contender. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I think that Jaylen Brown to me is like not the worst guy, to your point, John, but like, yeah, like, how is that not like he's worse than Jimmy Butler and Paul George, but you make that kind of a move where you're not trading some of these really high value players. I don't see how I wouldn't pick them or like put them on a level with Milwaukee and Boston.
I would rather have Jaylen Brown than either of those 2 guys.
And not just because of age, or
I know age is the driving factor for me. I think that's a big part of it because I feel like Jimmy Butler is the guy that's going to fall off a cliff, and it's coming, and it's just a matter of when, not if. And Paul George always had some injury issues, and again, he's not.
So what I'll say is this: I agree with you that Paul George, like, I trust Jalen Brunson at the end of a game with the ball more than Paul George, but I think having a guy that does what Paul George does, 1, defensively, and then 2, what he can do offensively in the preceding 42, 43 minutes of a game,
That's fair.
That tangibly moves the needle to me to maybe be worth like 6, 7, 8 wins at the top end of the spectrum. So I would still, like, I don't disagree with that, your specific point. I still think, 1, I think Paul George on aggregate is a better player than Jalen Brunson, but 2, also, like, I just think what he gives you in that other area, in other areas defensively, obviously, and what he does in the other aspects of the game.
Look, I agree, but here's the bottom line: when you get to big moments, and maybe I'm arguing against my own Zach LaVine point here, which is fine. I probably am. I'm probably overrating him. He's probably not good enough. But when you're looking for a team to win a championship in the playoffs, who has the player that's going to close the game for you? If Paul George or Jalen Brunson's your best game closer, let's be honest, you're probably not winning an NBA championship.
I honestly, man, I'm going to say this, and I know this is crazy. I don't think we know that for sure with Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
I don't think we know that. Like, I don't think the last time we saw him in a playoff series where he was the guy, and I know it was Utah, and I know they weren't a great team, whatever. But like, he did what he had to do without Luka Doncic on the floor. And all we heard, I gotta say this, because all I heard this year, oh, Luka doesn't have help. Luka doesn't have help. Luka doesn't have this. He doesn't have somebody holding his fucking hand. Like, it's not his fault. He showed up 15 fucking pounds overweight and got fatter during the season somehow. Like, I hear all this stuff. Jalen Brunson went.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah. Jalen Brunson went 2-1 with that same exact supporting cast. He went 2-1 on first round series, and really is the reason they even made the Western Conference Finals. We're going to be real, because they could have easily gone down 0-3, and most people were picking them to go to lose those games.
Look,
but who was guarding him in that series?
That's the thing. They did not have. If you
is that a guy who's going to be guarding him soon, though?
If you run into Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and you put one of them on Jalen Brunson, that's going to be a problem for Jalen Brunson.
I think
who's guarding him in the series we're playing?
Donovan Mitchell. We know.
Uh,
Stacey,
did-
we
did-
get it.
Did he?
Well, no, and I think that's why we all think that Brunson,
Yeah.
has a really good matchup this series. But eventually, you come up against Boston with with their pretty good perimeter defenders.
I
Can
think
be
I
difficult.
think he'll torch Boston. Boston they can't defend guards. This has been their problem going back to last year. They suck at defending skilled point guards because Marcus Smart can't move anymore. He's like better at defending bigs, right? That they had him defending Randall last time he played them. They're like, yeah, no, go annoy him in the post. Maybe he'll get himself ejected if you're just annoying enough. But
He might.
I don't
I
think
worry more about Drew than I do about
yeah,
Boston
and
James,
he owns Drew. He's cooked Drew every single time we've played. Like anytime he's matched up on Drew, he's absolutely lit him up. He lit him up at the Garden at the game I went to, and they blew a 17-point lead. Of course they did. But like he had 44 or something in that game.
Yeah.
He lit him up. Like I think Brunson.
DeJounte Murray
is-
outplayed him once.
I really believe this. I believe. I just believe that Brunson. We are still figuring out what he's actually fully capable of. And I agree. I do suspect that a guy like Paul George would give him an issue, right? But like I've also seen every single time something gets put on Brunson, like, oh, he can't do this thing, right? Like he struggled with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in that series a couple years ago, which is why Carlisle cut his minutes and why like the Mavericks were very, very astutely did not offer him an extension that summer. He struggled with that.
It was all Rick Brunson's fault, though. It was all Rick Brunson's fault. Remember?
The parents got involved. It was but
It was really the dick foul, right?
But he comes back from that. He clearly improves as a player. He takes a step, right? Then he comes to New York, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Knicks are so dumb. They overpaid this guy $100 million. He's not worth that. He's at most a Fred VanVleet level contract." Well, and what does he do? He comes out this year, and he is probably the biggest reason that the Knicks have made the jump they have made, because you went from a position that was a total weakness last year, partially due to bad signings and partially due to Tom Thibodeau deciding Alec Burks needed to be the starting point guard. Like he turned that alongside with Manuel quickly, but mostly because of him, into a massive strength. And that's been the biggest thing. And then on top of it, like I think his end of his clutch time numbers this year.
No, they're
I'm pretty
great.
Sure. Yeah, they're fantastic. So like
Despite the fact there's some crazy Knicks fans that think he like cost them games late in games here and chokes. I don't know what team that those guys are watching, but there is a group of fans that does actually think that. I'm sure you guys have seen them on the interwebs.
Well, and I would think it goes beyond that. This is like we asked Jordan this about the I think Jalen Brunson is a pretty big part of the Knicks' offensive rebounding too, because the Kobe assist, right? Like how many times do the Knicks get offensive rebounds, even if it's not a layup that he misses, that Mitch can, like a scrambling defense because of dribble penetration is always going to be vulnerable, whether you're closing on a shooter or whether you're helping off Mitch, right? So, or directly helping off and he gets like a glorified lob attempt, like those, like he's impacted everything they've done, at least on offense, in a huge way. I think you cannot separate it from Randall's improvement. It's not like Randall's shooting the shit out of the ball. Like the biggest thing with Randall is his shot profile is better and he's turning the ball over less, right? Yeah. Well, I think Brunson is at least as big a catalyst of that as Randall's own improvements. And I don't want to take away from those, but if we didn't have Brunson, even with the steps quickly took, I don't know that that Randall has that kind of transformation.
Hey, look, here's the bottom. Look, no one was more of an advocate of bringing in Brunson last summer than me. I love Jalen Brunson. He's excellent. I'm not, I think the 42% 3-point shooting is maybe something I didn't really fully expect would happen this year. But a pleasant surprise, especially at the volume. His mid-range game has always been great. We saw he did in the playoffs. I was fully confident that Brunson would be pretty much what he was this year. Maybe maybe closer to 21 or 22 points a game, not 24, but the efficiency and maybe, this is what the guy I thought they were getting. This is why I thought it was a good move to do what they did to bring him in. Historically in the NBA, it's hard to find a championship team whose best crunch time player is 6'2" or 6'1". It's just hard. It just hasn't. It's
Golden State, right? Golden State.
It just hasn't happened. And
even Curry's 6'3", right?
Steph Curry.
And Curry is 6'3" too. So
right,
it's
and he's got, I don't know what his wingspan is, but I feel like he's probably longer than Jalen Brunson is too. So that's the thing. It just historically you haven't seen that a lot. So I feel like you need, and that's why when you talk about bringing in that next star, right? if you just trusted Randall's decision making a little bit more, he's the body type that you want as a guy to close games for you because he's so physically imposing. How are you supposed to stop that if he's doing what he's supposed to do? You can't because of his traits. So I think that's why the guy I'm looking for is someone that has those traits of a bigger, longer, more athletic player where, when you have LeBron, you have Kobe, even to an extent, Jason Tatum, it's up to them whether they win these games. You can defend them any way you want, but if LeBron wants to win the game-winning shot, he's going to make the game-winning shot. And look, there's only a few of those guys in the league. Luka Doncic is one of them, and maybe that's one of the guys you're patient for. I don't know. That's, I think, the guy ideally you're looking for. And look, obviously the two guys that you circle with big red markers and you put stars next to their name are Embiid, who I worry about your best player being a center. That's just, again, it's one of my things. I've always said that. And we just, and this is a guy who grew up on low post basketball in the 90s. I watched Hakeem Olajuwon and Patrick Ewing. I would love to bring low post basketball back. But right now it's just hard to win with the center as your best player, in my opinion, because I feel like there are ways to kind of deny him the ball a little bit when you get into the half court. And then, Doncic is a monster. I mean, to your point, his defense is awful. And you talk about Zach LaVine's bad defense. Well, Luka's worse. And he's not in shape. And that's a problem. But my God, that guy, if he ever figures that stuff out, I mean, he's Larry Bird. I mean, he's ridiculous. That's how good of a player Luka Doncic is, without the rebounding that Bird had, obviously. But, I mean, he's that good of a player. So I think those are the two super duper stars that you wait for. Those are the, top of the mountain. The question is, how long do you wait for one of those guys to shake free? Or do you maybe make a sub move and then, all right, maybe one of those guys break through later and then you can trade two of your sub stars for the one super duper star. So there are different ways to go about it. And I think I don't know if it's going to happen this summer. I got to be honest with you. I'm not sure it's going to happen this summer, but that's the next thing to try to figure out. And the good news is that now you're not coming to New York to be the savior. You're coming to New York to be the final piece, which is different amount of pressure and responsibility than to be the first guy. Being the second or third guy is easier than being the first guy. So I think you'll have more guys willing to make that jump because you see the progress they've made already with Brunson and Randall.
And I think, one of the things that, like you talked about, is they have a window here. It behooves them to not be in a rush. Yeah. They actually have done the hardest part of this. Not the hardest part necessarily, but they've done the part now where, like, they have established a pretty solid baseline.
No, and they got there without blowing their asset core. That's the thing. It would have been easy to get here with blowing your asset core. They could have done that 2 or 3 times over already, but they did it while maintaining their stockpile. That's the key.
Right. And I think,
which is not easy, by the way.
No, it's not. And especially now when 2 of those guys, you got picked in 25, right? So it's not like you were just landing lotto pick after lotto pick.
And by the way, 2 guys you picked in 25 and 2 other guys you sound as outright free agents.
Yeah.
That does not happen in the NBA anymore.
Right. Very rarely. And I think the other part here is, like, so if you're looking at this team just objectively, like, forgetting all this, like, there's, again, I hate to go back to this, but, like, there's one position here, one guy who's just been a negative in the rotation all year. That is RJ Barrett. It's just a fact. Like, this is not, do I think he's forever this player? No, I don't, but that's what he's been. So do you as a front office look at this and be like, hey, look, like, we want to make the next step? And so there's 2 ways, right? Like, you can do that without, as you mentioned, like, without going crazy this summer. The 2 ways are, we believe RJ Barrett this year is not a reflection of who he's going to become or who he even maybe is right now. It's just a bad year for him for a variety of reasons, whatever they may be. Maybe they know stuff we don't know. Maybe he has an injury. I've said this multiple times, the way he's moving, it's like the day after the season ends, it might make me feel good to see like a Woj tweet of, like, oh, RJ Barrett, he's getting surgery to his like a hernia surgery. He'll be out. He'll be ready for training camp. Like, maybe, but that's one. And then the other one is, we like RJ, but we can't sit around and wait for him. We want to upgrade that position now. I think there's a way probably to upgrade it without going for a superstar because, as I've said, like, there are just things that you can get from that position that move the needle, not to the degree we talked about to maybe make you a contender, but to the level where you're like, now we're that close now. And I think, I don't particularly love this move for contractual reasons, but like, is like an RJ for OG and an OB swap? Is that something that interests the front office? Like, is that something that they make
Is
sense?
that
to
something
them?
you might be interested in?
I think it might be
Here's the
something.
problem, though. You trade
Yeah.
RJ, you got to put 2 unprotected firsts in to get OG, and then all of a sudden, what do you to make the monster
Right.
trade? Then what do you have left?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly just like a thought exercise of like,
No,
who's the guy?
I
Yeah.
get it.
His value is that low though that you would need to add 2 unprotected first to him just to get OG. Like,
Well, I mean, Masai thinks he's like Michael Jordan, so
I think the better
apparently
question is, what would you guys give up to get Siakam?
Siakam
more
with
than-
Randall.
That's a
That would be
tough fit.
yeah.
I mean, could you play them together, like at the 4 and 5?
I don't think Tibbs is that. If you're gonna do that, you need to not have Tibbs as your coach.
I think there's
Also,
a better
I wouldn't
chance.
do that.
I think there's a better chance of Tibbs playing him at the 3 and the 4 than the 4 and the 5.
Yeah,
I think to your point, like I think that is the like one needle mover is getting that kind of wing to the point that both of you made. But yeah, like I have mentioned this a few times, but yeah, like who was the guy a long time ago when Randall was still in not Dallas, in LA, and he was about to be a free agent. The Knicks wanted to, like a lot of Knicks fans, a lot of posts were about this guy pairing on the Knicks because of the power forward center hybrid we had, who was a good shooter and rim protector who complemented Randall's strengths.
So you want to trade RJ for Porzingis?
I don't know if I would do that.
No, I'm just kidding.
but like I am intrigued by adding, like I am still intrigued by that front court if you can make it happen. And the larger point I'm making is if there is a guy who can space the floor and protect the rim, right? Jaren Jackson Jr. is like the archetype of this, but there's a guy, Taylor Hendricks. Like one reason I would be pissed if we lost this draft pick, I don't think it's a disaster by any means, but there's a guy named Taylor Hendricks in the draft who's 6'10", blocks 2 shots a game, shoots 40% from 3. Like you get a guy like that who in a year or two even Tibbs trusts to put him next to Randall, even for 10 minutes a game, if you can go 5 out with Randall and Brunson, that is a game changer. These are the kinds of things that tip series, even if you don't have like the upper echelon talent, maybe. And so that's why next to a wing, that is the other thing I think that would be a massive needle mover, assuming you're not going to like blow the load for, in that kind of a trade. To answer your question though, like I think if you had the ability to get Siakam for like 3 firsts, RJ and OB, I would do it and tell Tibbs that if it's not adding up to what it needs to add up to, you suck it up and you try those small ball lineups because I think they can work and I think that they would be pretty impossible to guard.
Yeah, I would. I don't know. I still think like RJ's value, and I'll put it this way. I will have a lot. I already have my thoughts on RJ. I don't think anything in this playoff series is going to change what I feel about him after this season. I'm not like aggressively trying to move him, but I'm listening this year for sure, and I'm probably gauging his value more actively than I was last.
Yeah,
last
and I
summer.
don't want to sell low on him either. I didn't mean to imply
You don't
that.
trade him to trade him. Like you trade him if you can get a young upgrade, right? So
yeah, you want him to be a meaningful part of a package, not just be salary filler that the other team has to take. You want him to actually, count for something in the deal.
Yeah, so I think that's one. And then look, I've said this for a while. Like this is all credit to Randall for this year. Like his turnaround, his bounce back has been awesome. And I genuinely mean that. Like, there's no shade, or it's not a backhanded compliment.
And everybody knows I was watching this for Schwinn to say that. I mean, he means it. I still remember the multiple rants that I've heard about Randall being on podcasts with this dude. For him to turn Schwinn around, for the people that haven't listened to this a lot, trust me, it means something.
But like. I still, in the back of my head, I'm still worried about him in the playoffs. Like I am, and I need to see that. Like if he comes down this first round series, and we get 3 or 4 just inexplicable, crunch time sequences from him, it's going to be very hard for me to at least not be like, that's a position, that stretch 4 position, whatever. Like, I just think like you should at least see what his value is. He had a great year. So if you're trading him now, you're not trading at a low. Like, you actually should be looking to really get value for him.
All right. Another thing too, he only has 1 year left on his deal, right? Does he have a 4th year option?
He's got 2 because the 3+1 got added on to the last year of the original.
Oh, that only kicked in this year. That's right. You're right.
So he's got 2. He's got 2 left. But like, I think that's you at least weigh this stuff. Like, I think with RJ and Randall this summer, you don't need to aggressively look to move them. I just think it's something you have to have in the back of your head. But like, look, we'll see. I think the Knicks are in a really good position. Doesn't mean it's still a work in progress. So you still really need to look at a lot of things. I mean, we didn't even talk about Mitch, but like, I love Mitch. I think Mitch has been really great this year. Is it worth considering, like, if he struggles to find any rhythm offensively in a playoff series, like, do you consider, like, okay, maybe we do need somebody a little bit more skilled offensively, as good as he is at offensive rebounding, as good as he is.
Because you clowned me for thinking the Bam trade wasn't a bad idea, but
the Bam trade? What's the Bam trade?
There was like a Bam trade that was like 2 firsts and Obi and RJ.
I mean, I think it's an interesting trade.
Yeah, you run to do that trade.
Yeah,
Miami would hang up laughing, but
they would laugh you out of the building. Apparently, would throw his big sack of rings at you.
I'll throw a name out there. I would trade probably multiple unprotected picks for him. I don't know. I don't think they would do this deal, but I would do this. Jaden McDaniels. I know he just broke his hand in the dumbest Amari way possible.
He's a good player.
He's already a Knick.
Yeah, I really think like
it wasn't a fire extinguisher now, it was just a wall.
But like I think he is the type of, like, we've talked about the archetype, wing defender, all that type of stuff. Yeah. He's that. I think his offensive game is definitely growing. Started to pop in some games at the end of the season.
He's the kind of guy you say unicorn about, right? Like, I think he does afford you the ability, maybe not under Tibbs. I think I would want to play him at the 4 next to Randall.
And the other thing with him, and this is why I think he might be more gettable than a lot of people might believe, is like, nobody's taking that Gobert contract, by the way. Okay, they got to own that. Dallas, Mark Cuban's not paying anybody. He's too cheap to do that.
Wait, you mean pairing Gobert with Anthony Towns wasn't a good long-term team building strategy? Really? Shocking. I can't believe it. This is my shocked face.
But so, like, if you look at it though, like, Gobert is basically like $40+ million a year. Cat, when his extension kicks in, is like $50+ million a year.
I don't want him either, by the way.
Yeah, I don't want Cat.
No.
Okay, and then Ant is going to get a max extension this summer.
I'll take him.
Yeah, which he's the one guy you're not going to get, right? But that's like $40+ million, right?
How about this? What? Okay, I'll take Ant, but I'll take Gobert's salary filler. How about that? I'll give you guys a chance to reset.
Yeah, I mean, somebody posted take Gobert for RJ and Mitch and get McDaniels back today. That was a great little Twitter moment. But like. So, that's a bunch of money they have there. They're going to be in cap hell, and they're going to have to find a way to retain Conley, because if they lose the salary, like, he's going to stay next year, but they're going to have to figure out, like, okay, how do we want to extend him? Do we trade him for another guy who's gone for another? Like, they're playing all these games, and they don't have a lot of assets. I do think they're like, you don't think
A-Rod got the money to pay for all those?
No, A-Rod definitely doesn't. But like, I just think that they're in a situation, especially because they're pick deficient, where the salary might push them into an uncomfortable space. And if they can replenish some of their draft capital, they'd be willing to listen.
That's not bad.
I would consider that one. I think that's one to consider. I don't know. Somebody asked us, y'all giving up RJ and picks for McDaniels in the chat from Nick's tape. I don't think that's going to be like, I wouldn't do that, but I do think like his salary right now is low, and it's going to be low until he hits restricted free agency.
And he's an defensive level player. Like a lot of people think he should make first team this year.
He's going.
I would not give up I would not give up more than one unprotected pick in that trade.
Actually, I would do 2 if I could do 1. If one of them is in an immediate term. So if it's like the 2024 pick, and then a future unprotected, I would do that because I still have flexibility after the season. I just think he's like. I really think that's a guy.
40% from 3, yeah.
Yeah, he's a guy.
Was he over 40 this year from 3?
Yeah,
39.8.
I didn't realize he was that good.
39.8. But like,
that's pretty good.
I think he's got real talent. I think he's gonna pop, and I would like to catch the train a little early. All right.
I don't blame you.
All right, I think that's a good place.
After that game, you didn't want Taurean Prince?
No,
That was the
but-
guy. I mean, Taurean Prince looked like the guy that would push us over the top there. So.
Yeah. All right, I think that's a good place. And John, thank you so much for coming on.
You don't want a series prediction? Come
Oh, yeah,
on, we got a
we're gonna do
playoff
this.
series here.
We're gonna do this here. I was gonna say, let the people know they can find you and
Yeah.
leave us with your prediction for the series.
I like that. Very good. Tease it. All right, yeah. I'm not, unfortunately, with 2 kids, one that's turning 1 at the end of the month, because I had to leave the Giants Friday night draft press conference last year to deliver the child in the hospital. April 29th coming up, April 30th rather. Pardon me. We had to leave on the 29th, born on the 30th. If you like draft stuff, I'm doing a ton of Giant stuff. That's what I'm doing now. Pretty much all Giant stuff. We got 3 different podcasts, so check them all out. Draft season, and this is not just you're a Giants fan. Draft season is an all draft, not Giant specific podcast. Tony Pauline, who does draft for Pro Football Network. We just talk draft prospects. It's once a week. Check it out. Search for draft season. Giants Huddle podcast. We bring on a bunch of guests. Just talking draft. We've had the past couple weeks. Thomas Dimitroff, the former Falcons GM. We had Lance Zierlein on. A couple former NFL scouts have come on the show. So go check that out. And then if you're a hardcore Giants fan, our daily show is Big Blue Kickoff Live. Every day live at 12:30. Then it goes up in podcast form. Check it out. And, I think if you're a Giant fan or a football fan or just like the draft, I think you'll really enjoy them. Should I give you if Randall's healthy, assume Randall's healthy? How do you want me to handle this?
You give us the full Monty, whatever you
All
want.
right. If Randall's healthy, Knicks in 7, I think they win a road game in Cleveland to win the series. I don't think they'll be able to close it out quicker than that. I think Donovan Mitchell and Garland are too good of a duo. I think they'll win a couple games on their own late. So I say Knicks in 7 if Randall's healthy. If Randall is not healthy, I think the Cavs take it home in 7. So I think we're going the distance. I think it's going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of close end of game things where it's one shot here or there. Whichever team is better shot making in the final couple minutes of the game, I think is going to come out with the victory. And hopefully that's to Schwinn's point, Jalen Brunson and the Knicks and not Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs, because I think that's really what it's going to come down to. And the last thing we want to hear for 5 months after this damn series is, they should have traded for Donovan
Stephen A.
Mitchell. Please. No, I don't want to deal with that, please.
All right, John, thank you so much for coming on. Stacey, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything like plug, and also make your series prediction.
Yeah, you can find me Stacey Patton 89 on Twitter. In terms of plugging, well, I will just always great to be on with John Schmeelk. First pod I ever did was with John, so thanks again at that time for having me on, and it's great to do another pod with you. Nothing to plug at the moment. In terms of series prediction, I'll fully admit this might be residue of being very confident against the Hawks a couple of years ago and being humbled, being very confident and seeing no way that TCU could make the college football championship and that happening. Being very confident in a lot of things. I just think the Cavs are really good. Even if Randall's healthy, I don't know if he's at 100%. I think the Knicks can win this series. I'm going to say Randall at full strength, Cavs in 7 with Mitchell. Yes, causing that 5-month dialogue or 5-month monologue, really, because it's usually people talking at the screen who say these things than talking with anyone else. So I think Cavs in 7 with a healthy Randall, Cavs in 6 if Randall is hurt. But I think we're going to walk, people who watch the series, people who watch this team are going to walk away proud of this team and very optimistic about the future. I think I will in that case. But I'm not predicting I'll win at this point.
Yeah. I have nothing to plug myself, so I'm just going to plug all the work at the Strickland. We have a lot of good content coming out this week, so check that out. There'll be a bunch of stuff coming up on the site. Also special shout out to Tyrese, to Sam, to Jeff, who did a bunch of awesome work on the rundown after each game. I know that people enjoyed that, and they were nice enough to have me on a bunch of times. So great work to them on this season, and they're still going to be going during the playoffs. My prediction, I hate doing this. I'm going to say if Randall's healthy, I think Knicks in 6. If Randall misses a game or isn't right for a couple games, I think Cavs in 6. That's what I think for this series. So take it or leave it. That's what we got. And I'll say this: I think Brunson's gonna have a fucking huge series.
I think so too.
I
I think you
think-
look at what he did last year against Mitchell. I don't think there's any reason to think he won't.
I think and I think it's gonna be like talking about like 35 a night or something. He's gonna be fucking wild.
I have one question for Stacey before we go, Schwinn. Is that all right?
Is it if it's about the Eagles? Yes.
It is actually about the Eagles. Who do you want the Eagles to take with with their 2 first-round picks?
At 10, I want Andre Carter or trade down, which I think.
You mean Jalen Carter?
Wow, I said Andre Carter, didn't I?
Well, Andre Carter is a prospect from Army
Yeah,
that's going to go in the 3rd round. I think he might be a little bit of a reach at 10, though.
Yeah, I mean, I would take him. I think I like him better than I like him in the 2nd round. But I would want Carter from Georgia at 10 or trade down.
So you are on the Lucas Van Ness or Nolan Smith bandwagon at 10.
No, not. I like Smith a lot in terms of potential. He's a little smaller than the pass rushers they have. They would probably want to make him an LB, like what they did with Kaiser White, and I just don't love that transition. I think they also need more depth because they're gonna have to pay Hurts. They're like, they paid Slay and Bradbury. Like it's just going to be like they need to get more cheaper players, and that's Howie Roseman.
That's what Howie does. That's what Howie does.
At 31, I am very much in the believer you don't take an RB in the 1st round.
If
but
Bijan's sitting there, dude, I was going to say, if we're talking from the Giants' perspective, that scares the heebie-jeebies out of me. Bijan Robinson with that quarterback and that offensive line and that running game, oh my God.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to be converted. And I think they might do it, especially if he does trade back, if he gets like extra firsts and like some later round picks to kind of build up the depth. I think they believe in their ability to find talent in the later rounds and to kind of, and I think like this is the Chiefs, like Andy Reid rarely took a RB in the 1st round, right? They did it with
Edwards-Helaire was the only one, and that did not work out for him.
But the reason they did that because they were just an embarrassment of riches everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And so the Eagles are closest to being in that position as they ever will be. They do have some holes. Didn't like that they lost Chauncey Johnson. So it's going like I do think they have needs, but those are like safety isn't necessarily a need you take in the 1st round either. I think you can always get corner depth. I think you can always go for pass rushers. Lane Johnson isn't getting younger, but at 31, where you might not like necessarily have that blue chip thing, I think Bijan is. If they took Bijan, I wouldn't complain, and I would start watching his YouTube highlights and probably be really hyped. So that's.
And by the way, also don't sleep on Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama either. He's really, really good.
Yeah, it's too bad Bijan's going to be in Buffalo after this draft. So
that also is very scary, by the way. Oh man.
Yeah, the only problem is we don't have an offensive line. They do. All right.
You have a running quarterback though, so that's pretty good.
We might. It might be a problem if you can't block for him though. All right, that is our podcast for today. I hope everybody has a great night and a great week. I will see you all on Friday, and the Knicks play on Saturday. So get hype. Have a good week.